Chapter 21. The Cultivation Realm. This is the Cultivation Realm. After breaking through the Immortal Extinction Formation, the Taiyan boat appeared within a continuous mountain range. Below was a deep abyss emitting a breath similar to the ruins' abyss, seemingly bottomless. The mountains rose and fell, shrouded in clouds and mist, presenting a magnificent sight. On the tallest mountain range, a vast and enormous city stood towering. Li Fan wanted to laugh heartily, but he couldn't help but cough, continuously spitting out blood. He was already too old. Originally, he was already at the edge of life and death, and the pressure brought about by traversing the Immortal Extinction Formation completely destroyed his vitality. However, being able to glimpse the cultivation realm before dying, this life was not lived in vain. Truth. The simulation ends. After the darkness, Li Fan's consciousness gradually recovered. Recalling his efforts in his previous life, when he tried various methods to successfully pass the Immortal Extinction Formation, only to accidentally discover the way to break it. Li Fan couldn't help but feel the unpredictability of life. What he couldn't forget was the scene where he looked back at the group of Void Ripper whales. How much did the cultivators of that era hate ordinary people? They not only banished them all and sealed them with the Immortal Extinction Formation but also arranged so many Void Ripper whales. No wonder the dark layer is so vast, larger than all the previous layers combined. It seems that over the thousands of years, it has been opened up by these Void Ripper whales. The distance is getting farther and farther. In the future, the land of immortal extinction might completely detach from the cultivation realm. Various thoughts surged in Li Fan's mind, but he suppressed them one by one. Replacing them was an uncontrollable joy. After 9 reincarnations, nearly 500 years, he finally touched the threshold of cultivation. It could be foreseen that the road ahead will be even more difficult. But Li Fan's desire for immortality remained unchanged, unwavering through countless lifetimes. Back in the present, facing the choices after this simulation, Li Fan was unusually hesitant. According to his previous plan, Li Fan intended to choose to accelerate the charging progress. The sooner he completed the charging of truth, the sooner he could go to the cultivation realm. Yes, even though the path to the cultivation realm was now smooth and there were no dangers, Li Fan still decided to wait until he had a chance to start again before setting off. After all, the path of cultivation is difficult. And this cultivation realm doesn't seem too friendly to ordinary people. Stability comes first, without a doubt. However, after seeing the list of available items, Li Fan hesitated. Because he saw the stone tablet of prohibition among the selectable items. After some contemplation, Li Fan decided to choose to keep the stone tablet. He wanted to use this to verify a certain guess in his mind. Name: Li Fan. Realm: mortal. Physical age: 2086. Mental age: 483. 1116. Charge progress for the Void Ripper whale: 0%. Second anchor point charge progress: 51%. Current anchor points: 1 bound items: Jade Cosmos 1000 Variations Sutra, Taiyan Boat, Stone Tablet of Prohibition. Damaged. Li Fan's 10th life began. During the 20 years of waiting for the charging to be completed, Li Fan followed the established historical trajectory, doing only a few things that didn't affect the course of history, preparing for his journey to the cultivation realm. After 3 years, Li Fan arrived outside Qian Hong's tomb. After contemplating for a moment, he chose not to use the immortal miasma to break the tomb but instead took out the stone tablet of prohibition directly from truth. The stone tablet he brought from the previous life underwent a strange change once it appeared in the world. A soft white light enveloped the stone tablet, making it look somewhat illusory. After a while, it started to dissipate like ice in the scorching sun. Unsurprisingly to Li Fan, the power of the stone tablet of prohibition within Qian Hong's tomb had just become much stronger. As I thought, cultivation techniques cannot be practiced together, and the same goes for natural treasures of heaven and earth. There should never be 2 identical treasures in the world, but I used the power of truth to create another identical one out of thin air. The result is that the 2 wonders spontaneously fused and eventually returned to one. As for which one disappears and which one remains, of course, the strong one will survive and the weak one will not. Li Fan then commanded his men to forcefully attack Qian Hong's tomb. As expected, the strengthened stone tablet of prohibition was remarkable. Even when using the immortal miasma, it took considerable effort to reduce its power. Wearing armor, Li Fan entered Qian Hong's tomb and looked at the stone tablet of prohibition. Its appearance had not changed much on the outside, it just seemed slightly less damaged. Truth still couldn't absorb it, indicating that it was only a quantitative change and had not reached a qualitative one. Li Fan squinted and ordered his men to move the stone tablet out of the tomb. When the strengthened stone tablet of prohibition was removed from the tomb, the destructive force surrounding it suddenly disappeared. With this, Li Fan's experiment ended. He stored this enhanced stone tablet of prohibition in the Tai Yan boat to be used as his asset for the journey to the cultivation realm in the future. In the 20th year, Truth was about to finish charging. Li Fan mercilessly executed a group of corrupt officials and landlords, confiscating the wealth accumulated by their families for generations. Because after going to the cultivation realm, he would still have to deal with mortals, so it was necessary to prepare wealth in advance. In addition to money, food was essential. However, food was the foundation of the country, and Li Fan was asking for too much at once. Officials and even merchants in the capital heard about this and seized the opportunity to raise grain prices, attempting to make a fortune. Li Fan didn't hesitate. During the morning court, he controlled the Tai Yan boat at its largest size and hung it in the sky above the imperial palace. The huge Tai Yan boat floated over the capital like a dark cloud. Countless citizens, upon seeing this, knelt down and kowtowed. The civil and military officials, witnessing such supernatural means from Li Fan, changed their expressions and showed enthusiasm, even actively helping Li Fan prepare food. With the active assistance of the officials, combined with the elimination of a group of corrupt merchants, the Tai Yan boat was finally filled to the brim. With everything prepared for millennia, Li Fan had no more concerns in the mortal world. He steered the Tai Yan boat and once again arrived above the ruins abyss, freeing his mind and allowing the Tai Yan boat to drift automatically at a constant speed. Although it only took a few hours in total, to Li Fan, it felt longer than the hundreds of years he had experienced before. After a long wait, Li Fan finally traversed the Immortal extinction formation and arrived in the cultivation realm. Getting used to the tearing sensation brought by crossing two realms, Li Fan looked excitedly outside the Tai Yan boat. However, after seeing the surrounding scenery clearly, Li Fan became somewhat dumbfounded. TL note. Thoughts on the new translation style. Chapter 22. Fellow Escapees. TL note. Decided to stick with the new style. Reception was mixed, but I think most would prefer faster translation over better stylization. In contrast to the continuous mountain ranges seen in the previous life, Li Fan found himself currently situated over a vast, endless expanse of ocean. What's going on? Why is this place different from before? Li Fan was somewhat stunned. He took out a map he had drawn based on memory from his pocket and attempted to find the location of the ocean on it. But after a thorough comparison, he couldn't find it at all. Never mind, I'll just take one step at a time. Not knowing where the mistake occurred, Li Fan put away the map and sighed. Fortunately, I have the Tai Yan boat for transportation. Otherwise, I might have been stranded here. I just don't know if I can find a place where people reside before the spirit stones in the Tai Yan boat run out. He wasn't one to blame himself. Li Fan quickly sprang into action. Choosing a direction, he piloted the Tai Yan boat while searching for traces of a city in the surroundings. The ocean was truly boundless. Li Fan flew for 7 days and nights, yet saw no signs of human activity. Fortunately, the Tai Yan boat was well stocked with food, so he didn't have to worry about survival. After more than 10 days passed, the speed of the Tai Yan boat began to slow down, indicating that its energy was nearly depleted. At this desperate moment, Li Fan finally spotted a faint silhouette of a ship on the ocean's surface. Li Fan was overjoyed and slowly lowered the Tai Yan boat's altitude to approach. However, as he got closer, he was rendered speechless. It was indeed a ship, but it was a ship that was on the verge of sinking. It seemed to have suffered some kind of attack, with a large hole in the hull, and 2/3 of it submerged in water. Around the ship, dozens of people struggled in the water, who were obviously the ship's crew. Most of them were not skilled swimmers and were barely clinging to pieces of wreckage, preventing themselves from sinking. Li Fan was hesitant about releasing the Tai Yan boat to save them, but then he heard one of the survivors, a man, struggling to shout, "Don't be afraid, I've sent a signal to the Immortal Master. He will come to rescue us soon. Everyone, hold on a little longer." Hearing this, Li Fan was moved. He stored the Tai Yan boat and jumped into the sea, quietly swimming towards these people. Silently blending into the crowd, Li Fan pretended to be struggling for survival, gasping for breath and barely keeping himself afloat. After a while, a streak of light flew over from a distance and stopped above the group. "Immortal Master, save us! Immortal Master, save us!" The people saw hope and began calling for help. Noisy. The voice belonged to a man, but his attire and features were obscured as if by a veil, making it hard to discern. With a disdainful snort, the man seemed to cast some spell, and Li Fan suddenly found himself unable to produce sound. The crowd fell silent instantly. The Immortal Master then flew to the side of the sinking ship and effortlessly lifted it from the water, repairing the gaping hole in the hull with a burst of light. He then looked at the struggling people in the water and snorted, lightly waving his hand forward. Li Fan and the others felt themselves lifted by an invisible force and flown towards the repaired ship. Bang, bang, bang. In an instant, the rescued people were thrown onto the ship like dumplings by the Immortal Master's rough handling. Unable to speak, they could only emit muffled sounds. But all of them had expressions of awe and joy for being saved, not daring to show the slightest complaint. Once everyone was rescued, the Immortal Master flew above them. In a stern tone, he said, "Who sent the distress signal?" The man who had comforted the others earlier immediately knelt down. The Immortal Master waved his hand, removing the spell from the man. While kowtowing, the man said, "This humble one is Su Changyu." The Immortal Master interrupted him directly, "You know the rules, right? After arriving, everything is unrelated to me. I have never seen you, nor do I know who you are. Understand?" Su Changyu nodded repeatedly, "This humble one understands. When we came, our family elders had already instructed." He stopped speaking halfway, his voice silenced. It turned out that the Immortal Master was satisfied and had silenced Su Changyu. The Immortal Master paid no attention to these mortals and flew to the bow of the ship. He cast a spell, and the ship swiftly sailed in a certain direction. Witnessing this scene, most of the people on board were filled with awe. Some seemed to have not recovered from the previous disaster, sitting on the deck trembling, curling up as if silently weeping. The ship fell into an eerie silence. This lasted for most of the day until it was dark. Finally, in the distance, a faint shimmer of light became visible. It was an island that appeared quite prosperous. Though it was still some distance away, faint sounds of human activity could be heard. Docked at the island's pier were hundreds of large ships, a magnificent sight. However, the ship Li Fan was on did not head towards the main dock but circled around the island, arriving at a less populated area at the back. Quietly, the ship entered a natural cave. After maneuvering through the narrow cave for a while, it finally came to a stop. Once the ship was anchored, several robust men in black attire came up to assist. However, they seemed to completely ignore the Immortal Master, merely using weapons to drive the people off the ship. Not a word was spoken. They escorted the people to a spacious hall. A black-clad man finally spoke. "You will rest here tonight. Food has already been prepared in the hall, help yourselves. Tomorrow, someone will take you to arrange your identities. Also, no unnecessary noise." He glanced around threateningly before turning and leaving. The hall fell into silence. After a long while, the Immortal Master's silencing spell wore off. Subsequently, the people in the hall began to discuss in groups. "This time, our luck was really bad. We were actually attacked by sea monsters. There were nearly 100 of us when we set out, but now, less than half remain. What's the use of seeking the Tao and cultivating as immortals? Sigh, I don't know what my father was thinking, insisting on sending me to this vast world for cultivation. If you ask me, cultivating immortality isn't as enjoyable as listening to music. That's right, back home, at least I was the son of the Southern King. I could enjoy all kinds of wealth and splendor. What's good about this place?" He was interrupted halfway, only the sound of sobbing remained, as his quick-witted companion quickly covered his mouth. At this point, Su Changyu, the man who had spoken earlier, said, "At this juncture, what's the point of saying these things? Didn't every family spend a great price to send you here? Instead of complaining, why not be patient and cultivate from now on? If you can truly become a cultivator, not only is there hope for a long life, but there's also a chance to return to our hometown and bring our family members out." Hiding in the shadows, Li Fan listened to the people's conversation, and he vaguely understood their identities. These people were probably like him, ordinary mortals banished to a land of immortal extinction. However, it seemed that in the places they were in, the existence of the cultivation realm was not a secret. Moreover, they had even developed a mature, smuggling, route. Li Fan stroked his chin and fell into thought. Chapter 23. Registering on Luli Island. While Li Fan was lost in thought, a slightly chubby young man approached him not far away. The young man patted Li Fan's shoulder, somewhat familiar. Brother, you seem unfamiliar. May I ask what position you hold in the Great Li? Or are you a wealthy merchant from another region? Li Fan swatted the young man's hand off his shoulder and looked at him coldly, saying nothing. The chubby youth felt like he was being stared at by a venomous snake and shivered. Though he felt a bit embarrassed for being scared by just a gaze, the chubby youth was quite perceptive. Li Fan seemed ordinary, but there was an aura of authority about him, and it was obvious he had been in a high position for many years. He's no ordinary person. The chubby youth quickly reached this conclusion and wisely left. Others saw this and understood that Li Fan wasn't very approachable. From then on, nobody tried to strike up a conversation with him. In the flickering light, the voices of the crowd gradually faded and everyone fell asleep. A quiet night passed. On the second day, before dawn, everyone was awakened. A middle-aged man with a long beard, dressed in a green robe and hands behind his back, walked up to the crowd. I will take you to register in a moment. After obtaining the registration, you will officially become a member of Luli Island, the middle-aged man said coldly, surveying the surroundings. Upon hearing the middle-aged man's words, the crowd showed excitement. Remember, don't speak what you shouldn't. Otherwise, I can't guarantee your safety, the man squinted his eyes, adding. The crowd understood that what they were doing was clandestine, and they all nodded. Then, following the middle-aged man's orders, Li Fan and the others changed into shabby clothes. Later, they were taught a unified script. You are all residents of the Western Great Gorge Island. Due to a natural disaster, the island was destroyed, so you fled here. If anyone asks, this is what you say. Everyone agreed. Afterwards, led by the middle-aged man and monitored by 4 or 5 black-clad men, they left the cave through a secret passage and arrived on the surface. After traversing through the residential area of the city, circling around for an unknown duration, they finally arrived at a mansion. Li Fan noticed that although their group of several dozen was not small, most of the island's residents only glanced at them casually and didn't pay much attention. It was clear that they were used to such occurrences. They didn't enter through the mansion's main gate. After a servant entered to report, he quickly returned and led the group through a side door on the left to a hall. The hall was quite spacious. Even before Li Fan and the others arrived, there were already 2 or 3 groups totaling over 100 people gathered. However, it didn't seem crowded. The middle-aged man gestured for everyone to wait patiently. Soon, it was Li Fan's group's turn. Steward Zhao, the middle-aged man called out. Are these the disaster victims who have come to register? Steward Zhao, who looked to be in his 50s or 60s, appeared somewhat aged. However, his eyes were exceptionally sharp. After sweeping his gaze across the crowd, he said with a half-smile, Sun Zhong, these disaster victims seem to be of high status. Sun Zhong remained calm and sighed, yes, they were all from wealthy families on the Great Gorge Island. Unfortunately, without the protection of a cultivator, a natural disaster struck, and all their wealth and glory turned to nothing. Now they have come far and wide to seek refuge on our Luli Island. Having said that, Sun Zhong took something from his pocket and handed it to Steward Zhao without a word. Steward Zhao glanced at it, accepted it, and sighed again. The recent storm wreaked havoc, and even our Luli Island was affected. The islands in the west suffered even more. It is said that over 200 islands were razed to the ground, and countless mortal souls returned to the sea. Thanks to the compassion of the Immortal Master, we were able to rescue the victims. It's a good thing that your heavenly treasure house is so concerned. Rest assured, I will definitely report to the Island Master truthfully. When the Immortal Master's reward comes, you will not be left out. Sun Zhong was delighted and began to flatter him. Steward Zhao listened and then started to handle the registration for everyone. Not long after, it was Li Fan's turn. Steward Zhao looked at Li Fan with a trace of curiosity. What is your name? Steward Zhao asked. Li Fan, Li Fan answered truthfully. Come, drip a drop of your blood on this. Steward Zhao wrote Li Fan's name with a pen dipped in blood on a rectangular object that seemed like jade but was not actually jade. He then handed it over. Li Fan pricked his finger, letting the blood drip. Afterward, as if imbued with life, the blood seeped into the 2 characters, Li Fan. Keep this spirit symbol well, it will be your identity proof from now on. Whenever you need to receive work, distribute food, or go through inspections on the island, you must show this spirit symbol. Do not lose it, Steward Zhao emphasized, more friendly towards Li Fan compared to the others, and gave additional instructions. This drew the attention of Sun Jiang and the others. Li Fan didn't say many words of gratitude, and after nodding, he put away the spirit symbol and walked to the side. The distribution of registrations was efficient, and soon, everyone had obtained their Luli Island household registration. The crowd was excited. After leaving that place, they didn't return to the previous cave but were led by Sun Jiang to the courtyard of a house. Now that you have obtained your household registration, shall we sign the contract? Sun Jiang said to Su Changyu and the others. Su Changyu took out a thin piece of paper from his pocket carefully and then pricked his finger to write his name with blood, solemnly and respectfully. After signing, the paper self-ignited without fire, turning into a wisp of green smoke, drifting away, and no one knew where it went. After the 3 contracts, only one more remains. When we settle down completely, I will sign the final contract according to the agreement, Su Changyu said calmly. Humph, it's troublesome dealing with you exile refugees. If not for the sake of the Immortal Master, our heavenly treasure house wouldn't engage in such a loss-making business, Sun Jiang snorted, somewhat dissatisfied. However, he didn't say much afterward but proceeded to explain the things they needed to pay attention to on the island. All residents of Luli Island can obtain a residence using their household registration spirit symbol. Although it is in a remote area at the northernmost periphery of the island, at least you will have a place to shelter from the wind and rain. Apart from that, for the first year after registering, you can receive a certain amount of free rations every month. Of course, if you are used to delicacies and can't tolerate this welfare food, you can spend your own money to dine on the island. After saying a lot, Sun Jiang's mouth was dry, and he paused for a rest. Suddenly, he heard Su Changyu ask, I am wondering, how can we cultivate? This was exactly what Li Fan was concerned about. He pricked up his ears and listened carefully. Chapter 24. Purge miasma to refine qi. Sun Jiang glanced at Su Changyu and patiently explained, for ordinary people to cultivate, they need to cleanse the miasma within their bodies. The concentration of miasma in the bodies of those of you who have returned from exile is far higher than usual. So, without purging the miasma, it's impossible to cultivate. Su Changyu furrowed his brows and said, we are well aware of this. But how can we remove this miasma? There are several methods to remove the miasma, replied Sun Jiang. The first is using the pure body spirit pool on the island. Soaking in the pool for a day and a night can completely remove the miasma from the body. Unfortunately, the materials needed to open the spirit pool are astonishingly high. Although we are wealthy on Luli Island, we can only open it once every 3 years. The last time it was opened was a year ago, so it'll be almost 2 years until the next opening. Moreover, the quota to enter the spirit pool is limited, and the competition is fierce. As outsiders without a foundation, it's unlikely for you to outcompete the island's residents, Sun Jiang shook his head. What about the other methods? Su Changyu continued. The second method is to practice the cleansing heart mantra, along with specific medicines and diet. Over time, this can change your physique and gradually eliminate the miasma. Although it takes a long time, often 5 to 6 years of effort, it's stable and doesn't require any special costs. The mysterious yellow cleansing heart mantra and the corresponding elixirs can be purchased at the island's pharmacies. 5 to 6 years, Su Changyu murmured softly, then persisted, are there any other methods? The third method is to become an experimental subject, Sun Jiang said. At this point, his face turned somewhat unpleasant, seeming to struggle to suppress his fear. But he continued to answer Su Changyu. Experimental subject, Su Changyu was somewhat bewildered. That's right, some immortals are very interested in the miasma within us mortals. Every year, they select volunteers from the mortal population on the island to serve as experimental subjects. Using special methods, they continuously extract the miasma from the research subjects. In a matter of a few months, the miasma within the experimental subjects can be completely extracted. Seemingly recalling something, Sun Jiang's face turned a little pale. However, this process is extremely painful. It's akin to being on the edge of survival, unable to live and unable to die. Most people can't endure until the moment when all the miasma is completely extracted and end up going insane. I don't recommend you to use this method. It's truly unbearable for an ordinary person. It was unknown whether Su Changyu paid heed to Sun Jiang's advice. He remained silent for a moment and asked, "Are there any other methods?" Sun Jiang shook his head. It's said that the direct descendants of those immortals can reshape their bodies using celestial treasures, not only eliminating concerns about miasma but also improving their cultivation aptitude. However, this method is beyond our imagination. Even our Luli Island can't grant this privilege. That's all I know. If you truly want to cultivate, think about it carefully in the days to come. After speaking, Sun Jiang noticed Su Chengyu looking somewhat distraught and couldn't help but console. I know you've all been through a lot to return from exile, and you all have a heart inclined towards cultivation. Who wasn't like that in the beginning? Unfortunately, cultivation is truly difficult. Even if you manage to purge all the miasma from your body, very few can sense the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and even fewer can draw it into their bodies. Why bother? Being an ordinary person is not a bad thing. Sun Jiang seemed to be consoling Su Chengyu and perhaps himself as well. With the invisible nourishment of heaven and earth's spiritual energy, even if you can't cultivate, you can live longer than in the land of immortal extinction. It's not in vain that your family paid a great price to send you here. Instead of tirelessly pursuing cultivation, it's better to enjoy life and live in the moment. Sun Jiang finished his speech and then left. The people present showed various expressions as some looked joyful, taking Sun Jiang's words to heart and finding an excuse for indulgence. Some couldn't accept the arduousness of cultivation and burst into tears, some wore worried expressions, unsure of what to do. Only Su Chengyu had a determined look on his face, seemingly having made some kind of resolution. Observing everyone's reactions, Li Fan felt deeply that in this world, every person had their own unique circumstances. And each person's choice determined their vastly different fates in the future. Without meddling further, Li Fan took advantage of the distracted crowd and quietly left. After inquiring, he found the place to receive a free residence on the island. Li Fan presented the spirit token and was then led by a designated person to the residential area in the north of Luli Island. Here, countless houses were densely packed, some empty and some already occupied by people. Most of these houses had only one room, but fortunately, they all had a small courtyard enclosed by walls, preventing them from feeling too bleak. The seventh of the sixth row, this is it, the impatient person handed the key to Li Fan and hastily left. Li Fan opened the courtyard door, walked in, and closed the door behind him. The room was very simple, with only a bed and a few tables and chairs, making Li Fan quite uncomfortable. However, he didn't care much about these external things. After a simple cleanup, Li Fan rested and contemplated his future plans. With this lucky start, settling down didn't require much effort. I have to thank those exiles for this. Unfortunately, this group, except for Su Chengyu, seems to be ordinary individuals, without the heart for cultivation, unlikely to become great talents. This place of residence is a bit simple, but the safety is guaranteed. I inquired earlier, there's an immortal overseeing Luli Island, and troublemakers have not dared to act out for a long time. The primary goal now is to purge the miasma from my body. Although the quota for the pure body spirit pool is precious, I've stored countless treasures in the Taiyan boat. It shouldn't be difficult to obtain a spot. The downside is drawing too much attention. Concealing one's wealth is essential. As an outsider with no foundation, suddenly displaying so much wealth will surely attract prying eyes. I need to plan carefully. Suddenly, a knocking interrupted Li Fan's contemplation. Who is it? Li Fan was instantly on guard. It's me, the voice was somewhat deep and sounded familiar. Li Fan remained calm, took out a sharp dagger from the Taiyan boat, and hid it in his sleeve. He opened the door slightly and saw the person clearly. It was the fat man who had tried to strike up a conversation with him before. Li Fan made a decisive choice and closed the door. Wait, the fat man quickly blocked it and whispered, "You're not one of us from the land of immortal extinction, right?" What? Li Fan was puzzled. The fat man took the opportunity to slip in. He observed Li Fan with malicious intent and said, "What kind of person are you? What's your purpose for sneaking into Luli Island? How do you know I'm not from the land of immortal extinction?" Li Fan asked back. The fat man looked disdainful. "When I fell into the water, I vaguely saw your suspicious figure. At first, I thought it was an illusion. After seeing your performance last night, I became more and more suspicious. So, I kept an eye on you. Seeing you urgently look for a residence, I secretly followed you to test the waters. Indeed, as soon as I tried you, you revealed yourself," the fat man said proudly. "From the looks of it, you're quite shrewd and attentive," Li Fan nodded. Of course, besides me, those fools wouldn't notice a stranger had entered, the fat man boasted. In that case, apart from you, no one else noticed this, right? Li Fan asked. Of course not. How can those idiots be compared to me? The fat man's words were abruptly cut off. Because a sharp dagger had pierced his chest. Watching the fat man falling to the ground, Li Fan's face remained expressionless. Chapter 25. Wealth Moves the Heart. Term change. Heavenly Treasure House greater than Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Dragging the fat man's corpse into the Tai Yan boat and cleaning up the bloodstains on the ground, Li Fan then casually returned to his room, acting like nothing had happened. Truly ignorant, Li Fan commented. The fat man clearly hadn't figured out the situation. Relying on a bit of cleverness, he thought he could threaten Li Fan, maybe trying to obtain some benefits from him. But did he ever question whether Li Fan had actually infiltrated Luli Island? This group of exiles, weren't they the same, obtaining their status by posing as disaster victims? Once they acquired the household registration of Luli Island, they truly considered themselves native inhabitants. Li Fan saw this clearly. Previously, the Immortal who concealed his face and came to pick them up, as well as the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion where Sun Jiang was, were very cautious in their actions, afraid of being discovered. Obviously, their identities as mortals from the land of immortal extinction were not something they wanted others to know about. Because of this fat man, who had no understanding of the situation, came to threaten Li Fan, and Li Fan killed him without hesitation. He didn't believe that the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion and the group of exiles would make a big fuss about this. Furthermore, even if they investigated that the fat man had visited Li Fan before disappearing, now that they couldn't find the body, as long as Li Fan insisted he hadn't seen him, they couldn't do anything to him. After all, if the matter escalated, it would not benefit either party. And if Li Fan hesitated and didn't take action, leaving the fat man alive, it might actually lead to various troubles. So, Li Fan decisively chose to nip any potential threats in the bud. As Li Fan predicted, a few days passed, and besides Su Chengyu asking about it once, the mysterious disappearance of the fat man didn't attract any attention from anyone else. This incident was just a small episode in Li Fan's island life, quickly pushed to the back of his mind. During these days, Li Fan inquired about various affairs on the island while planning how to use the treasures in the Tai Yan boat in a reasonable manner. Gradually, Li Fan gained a general understanding of the Luli Island he was currently on. This sea area was called the Kong Yun Sea. The Kong Yun Sea was vast and scattered with tens of thousands of islands of various sizes. Luli Island was located in the central southern part of the Kong Yun Sea and was of medium size. The island was named after the delicious and tender luli fish once abundant in the surrounding waters. The luli fish was not only popular among the common folk of the surrounding islands but was also occasionally used by some immortals to refine elixirs due to the luli pearl that would occasionally form in the fish's body. Hence, the island needed an immortal to oversee it, and a certain amount of luli pearls had to be collected annually. Immortals generally did not intervene in worldly matters, making it difficult for ordinary people to see them. The day-to-day affairs of Luli Island were usually managed by the Luli mansion established by the island master. Island residents could obtain a job within the Luli mansion. The higher the risk of the job, the higher the reward. Among these jobs, fishing for luli fish was the most popular. Apart from being relatively safe, the rewards were considerable. Moreover, when the harvested luli fish were handed over, only 70% of them needed to be turned in, while the remaining 30% could be sold privately. So, this fishing job was quite appealing. However, fishing required a large ship, and the schools of luli fish were elusive. Specific spirit guides from the island were needed to locate them. These spirit guides were only issued by the Luli mansion during fishing expeditions and had to be returned after returning to the island. Private fishing was impossible. If caught, the penalty was direct execution. Therefore, this fishing for luli fish was only allowed under the permission of the Luli mansion. Those who could go fishing were highly regarded by the island's residents. A few days ago, a fleet that had gone fishing not only had a great catch of luli fish but also encountered a sunken ship. This ship was said to have escaped with the family to avoid a disaster, so it carried more than a dozen boxes of gold, silver, and jewels. At this moment, the fleet had made a fortune. Regarding the salvaged items from the sunken ship, the island's rules were the same as for luli fish. They could keep 30% for themselves. So, when the fleet returned to the port, half the island was buzzing with excitement. Even the island's treasurer and money manager personally came to inspect. Seeing the fleet members almost grinning from ear to ear, many people on the island were envious. They began to privately seek connections, wanting to obtain the qualification for the next fishing trip. In Li Fan's view, he could slowly launder the countless treasures on the Tai Yan boat using a similar method, with relatively low risk. The only difficulty lay in how to obtain the qualification for a solo fishing trip. The existence of the Tai Yan boat must never be exposed. Too many people on the island wanted to join the fishing fleet. After inquiring casually, Li Fan learned the key information. Among the 3 trusted subordinates of the island master, Zhao, in charge of personnel matters, Qian, in charge of financial matters, and Zhou, in charge of public security, most of the fishing fleet quotas were in Qian's hands. Zhao and Zhou had always wanted to intervene, but the quotas were firmly controlled by Qian, and they only controlled 1 or 2 fishing fleets. Where there were people, there was conflict. Li Fan remembered Zhao's reaction when he saw him on the day of registration. He thought maybe he could meet this Zhao. However, Zhao wasn't someone Li Fan could easily meet now. Li Fan decided to follow Sun Zhong's approach with the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. After inquiring about the location, Li Fan arrived at the door of the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion, wanting to meet Sun Zhong. However, he was turned away. "Go away, our senior son has a distinguished status. Do you think you can just see him whenever you want? Hurry off." Several big, intimidating men at the door looked at Li Fan malevolently, as if they were ready to act. Seeing this, Li Fan had no choice but to leave for now. He found it somewhat strange. The Heavenly Treasure Pavilion was a place of business after all. How could they just turn people away without seeing them? Moreover, these big men made decisions without seeking approval, as if they already knew who Li Fan was. It must be that they received orders and intentionally avoided me, Li Fan concluded. He guessed that something had happened on the exiles' side that made Sun Zhong turn hostile and not recognize them. After some inquiries, Li Fan finally learned what had transpired. It turned out that Su Changyu, in order to quickly get rid of the miasma in his body, chose to become an experimental subject for the Immortals. Before leaving, Su Changyu signed his name on the final contract. Now, the 3 contracts were completed, and the final contract had completely dissipated. There was no longer any connection between the exile group and the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. No wonder they suddenly turned hostile and deliberately avoided us. I just didn't expect Su Changyu to be so determined, Li Fan sighed. We tried to advise him, telling him not to be in such a hurry. But he wouldn't listen. The person who spoke was also familiar to Li Fan. It was Xiao Heng, who had claimed to be the son of the Southern King in the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion cave. Xiao Heng seemed to have a very good relationship with Su Changyu and was extremely dejected at the moment. If it weren't for his terminally ill sister, Brother Su wouldn't have fought so desperately. Hearing this, Li Fan was lost in thought. Chapter 26. Skillful Persuasion. Although Sun Zhong chose to avoid seeing him, Li Fan wouldn't give up so easily. Judging from the day he couldn't help but console Su Changyu, this person was at least not treacherous. The reason for his cold attitude was probably to avoid too much involvement with mortals from the immortal extinction land. Compared to ignorant people, Li Fan preferred dealing with the knowledgeable. So Li Fan came back to the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. "Why are you back again? Are you looking for trouble?" The black-clad man at the door looked at Li Fan warily and said menacingly. Li Fan smiled slightly. "I'm here to do business with your Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. You won't even talk and just want to drive people away. Is this how you treat guests at the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion?" Li Fan intentionally raised his voice, drawing the attention of the people around him. "You." The big man was instantly enraged and was about to attack, but was stopped by the person beside him. After consulting for a while, the big man reluctantly led Li Fan inside. Arriving at a guest room, a maidservant brought in a cup of tea. Li Fan tasted it unhurriedly. As the tea went down, he felt a warm stream flowing from his stomach throughout his body. In just a moment, Li Fan felt as warm as if he had basked in the sun for half the day in winter, even feeling a bit feverish. "Good tea," Li Fan couldn't help but praise. Great Yuyan Dragon Tea, which grows around the underwater volcanoes near Great Yuyan Island. There are only a few of them. Now, with the destruction of Great Yuyan Island, Great Yuyan Dragon Tea has temporarily become a rare item. A person with a smile on his face walked in and said slowly. It was Sun Zhong. "My thanks to you, Senior son, Li Fan replied without reservation and finished the remaining tea. When Li Fan put down the teacup, Sun Jiang narrowed his eyes and asked slowly, the matter of transportation is over, and there should be no more entanglement between us. Why have you sought me out again? Sun Jiang's tone was not friendly, and there was a hidden killing intent in his eyes. It seemed that if Li Fan's answer didn't satisfy him, he would take action and kill. Li Fan didn't care about Sun Jiang's aggressive questions and replied with a smile, Elder son, you misunderstood. I really came to discuss business. Business? With you? Sun Jiang was initially surprised, then sneered while looking at Li Fan. Li Fan remained unfazed and silent. Seeing Li Fan so assured, Sun Jiang gradually became serious. What business? I wonder if the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion is interested in the slots for the sea expedition fleets, Li Fan said slowly. Every time a fleet sets sail, aside from occasionally salvaging precious treasures, just the luli fish and other marine specialties are enough to make a lot of profit. If you say that the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion is not interested, that's impossible. But the slots for the fleet are firmly controlled by Steward Qian. Not to mention the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion, even Steward Zhao would find it extremely difficult to occupy an extra slot. As a newcomer, what ability do you have to covet it? Sun Jiang stared at Li Fan, seemingly trying to read something from his face. If I can meet Steward Qian, I have my ways to convince him, Li Fan replied confidently. Seeing Li Fan so determined, Sun Jiang hesitated. Then let him meet Steward Qian. It's not a difficult matter. If things don't work out, just chop him up and feed him to the fish in the sea. At this moment, a somewhat lazy voice came from outside the room. Li Fan's eyes condensed, and he saw a woman wearing light yellow clothes and a veil walking in. The woman sounded like she was only 17 or 18 years old, but her well-proportioned figure exuded a mature and tempting charm. Greetings, manager. Sun Jiang stood up immediately upon seeing the woman, respectfully greeting her. Thank you in advance, manager. Li Fan remained calm, arching his hand. You seem to have some confidence. You don't seem like someone who speaks empty words. The woman sat across from Li Fan, tilting her head slightly, looking curious. I have always been a man of my word, and I never go back on my promises, Li Fan said frankly. The woman in yellow lightly laughed out. If this matter really comes to fruition, my Heavenly Treasure Pavilion may have to extract the corresponding benefits. According to the rules of the island, each time you go out to sea, you can keep 30% of the harvest for yourself. I don't want any of this 30%, half of it will be given to Steward Zhao, and half of it will be handed over to your Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. Li Fan nodded his head in agreement and spoke shockingly. The woman in yellow froze. She resumed and carefully sized up Li Fan for a few moments. That's strange. In that case, what do you want after going to such great lengths? I only want a quota to enter the pure body spirit pool. Li Fan said frankly. Huh, the woman was really shocked at this time. She looked at Li Fan several times, as if to make sure she hadn't heard it wrong. Li Fan locked eyes with her, his gaze firm. The woman laughed lightly, as if she had heard a particularly funny joke, and burst into laughter. Come on, uncle, you're quite old, and you want to learn cultivation from others. After laughing for a while, she struggled to stop and managed to say a sentence before bursting into laughter again. Sun Jiang looked at Li Fan, also full of disbelief. Li Fan just looked at the woman calmly, without speaking. The woman's laughter grew fainter. Ha ha. In the end, she laughed dryly and returned to normal. But seeking immortality at your age? That's funny, she said with a smile, tapping her chest, seeming a bit relieved. But if I seek longevity, I will not regret it even if I die. Li Fan said indifferently. The woman in yellow did not say anything for a long time. Good, I shall accept this matter. In the end, she clapped her hands and said, I will send someone to inform you when a date has been set. In that case, it is so agreed. I live in the 7th house of the 6th row outside the city, so you may go there to look for me. Li Fan arched his hand and turned to leave. Only the woman in yellow and Sun Jiang remained in the room. After a long silence, Sun Jiang couldn't help but say, Manager, that pure body spirit pool quota. Although the quota for the pure body spirit pool is highly contested on the island every year, it's not as if our Heavenly Treasure Pavilion doesn't have the strength to fight for it. What's more, if he can really secure a fleet of ships to go out to sea, it will only take 5 years or so for the profits brought in by the fleet to be enough to cover a quota. This matter is a steady investment. The woman in yellow was unperturbed. Rather, She frowned her eyebrows, looking in the direction Li Fan had left and muttered to herself. What? Sun Jiang couldn't help but ask. That person's eyes were a little frightening. The yellow-clothed woman patted her chest, seemingly a little shaken. Sun Jiang was stunned for a moment. On the way back, Li Fan stopped at a pharmacy and bought the Clear Heart mantra and the corresponding medicinal ingredients. Even if everything went smoothly, it would still take 2 years for the net body spirit pool to open. Such a long time couldn't be wasted. Why not cultivate the Clear Heart mantra first and see its effects? Maybe Li Fan had exceptional talents and could eliminate the miasma in his body in less than 2 years. In the following days, Li Fan stayed at home practicing, waiting to meet with Steward Zhao. Little did he know that before he could meet Steward Zhao, Li Fan heard some shocking news. Su Changyu was dead. Chapter 27. The Wise Recognize Talents. Su Changyu didn't make it in the end. In just 7 or 8 days, Su Changyu couldn't hold on any longer and passed away. When his body was brought back, Li Fan went to take a look. Only a twisted mass of flesh remained, no longer resembling a person, looking rather horrifying. Occasionally, the flesh would twitch inexplicably, sending shivers down one's spine. These people who arrived on Luli Island were newcomers, struggling even to gather enough money to buy a plot of land for burial. Originally, they planned for a sea burial, but Li Fan couldn't bear to see it and used some money to arrange a proper burial for Su Changyu. Everyone was very saddened. Among them, Xiao Heng cried the most miserably. Li Fan didn't have any particular feelings, just a sense of sorrow. After nearly 300 years of reincarnation in the mortal world, Li Fan had a set of skills for judging people. In his view, Su Changyu behaved decently and had a rather firm determination. Although he couldn't be considered an exceptional talent, he was definitely not an ordinary person. Among the people who came to Luli Island, he thought Su Changyu was the most likely to make a name for himself. This person couldn't even pass the prerequisite of cultivation, the dispelling of miasma, and silently passed away. The path of immortality was difficult. Li Fan sighed even more. During the process of practicing the Cleansing Heart mantra, in the following days, Li Fan's perception of this deepened. As it turned out, Li Fan was not talented. For nearly a month, Li Fan stayed in seclusion every day. Besides receiving a job to conceal his activities, he hid at home, practicing the Cleansing Heart mantra. Generally, after half a month of practice, ordinary people would experience obvious effects such as improved energy and faster thinking. But a month passed, and Li Fan felt no change at all. Li Fan guessed that it might be because his mental strength, after several reincarnations and hundreds of years of tempering with truth, had far surpassed that of an ordinary person. Therefore, the Cleansing Heart mantra didn't have much of an effect on him. However, Li Fan wasn't in a hurry. He treated it as a daily practice routine. After another half-month, Li Fan finally was contacted by the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. After following a messenger, Li Fan saw Steward Zhao in a courtyard owned by the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. Steward Zhao, long time no see, Li Fan greeted, arching his hand. Steward Zhao glanced at Li Fan and went straight to the point. I've heard from the people of the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion that you want to request a spot for an expedition fleet. Quite ambitious. What do you rely on? You know, I have only 2 quotas available. I don't even have enough for my subordinates. Why should I give one to you? Fleet expeditions are for profit. I wonder, Steward Zhao, how does the profit from catching luli fish compare to the direct loot from shipwrecks at the bottom of the sea? Li Fan smiled slightly. It seemed that Zhao, the steward, didn't think Li Fan was bragging. He seriously considered it for a moment and asked, some days ago, the fleet unexpectedly obtained dozens of boxes of jewelry. According to the calculation by the government, the gains were enough to offset several routine fishing expeditions. But how could such good luck happen every time? In my more than 10 years on this island, I remember only a few major gains. He paused and continued, listening to your words, you. Li Fan nodded, if I take charge of a fleet, I can guarantee that every time the fleet goes out to sea, it will bring back a certain amount of treasure. Zhao, the steward, had a strange light in his eyes and stared at Li Fan for a few moments before saying, you surprisingly didn't lie. Now it was Li Fan's turn to be surprised. I indeed spoke the truth. But I wonder, how did Steward Zhao figure that out? Zhao, the steward, chuckled, I was born with peculiar eyes that can recognize capable people and distinguish truth from falsehood. When you spoke just now, I only saw a soft white light emanating from you, proving that what you said was true and without any ill intent. If there were dark clouds, it would indicate you had other motives. Is there such a strange ability? Li Fan was suddenly astonished. On the day you joined, the attitude of Steward Zhao seemed slightly different from others. But what did you see? He asked. I can only see a general idea, not everything. I only saw that you will be very wealthy and have shed much blood. Clearly, you are not an ordinary person. That's why I treated you more politely, Steward Zhao explained with a smile. The will of heaven is unpredictable. Who knows how many rich and noble people like you end up stranded on our Luli Island? Some people only lurk for a few years and then rise again, some just fade into the crowd and eventually rot away. Li Fan listened and thought of something. So when we joined that day, did Steward Zhao realize that what Heavenly Treasure Pavilion's Sun Zhong said was untrue? So what if it's true or false? Sometimes being too honest may not be a good thing. My duty is only to ensure that there are no traitorous individuals on the island. It doesn't matter where you come from, as long as you keep to yourself, I won't treat you badly, Steward Zhao said dismissively. There is an immortal cultivator on the island, so we don't fear any trouble. Moreover, gathering the disaster victims was also the command of the Immortal Master. If Sun Zhong can lead so many disaster victims to our Luli Island, why would I make things difficult for him? Steward Zhao explained. Li Fan listened and gained a rough understanding of Steward Zhao's approach. So the topic of the two returned to the fleet of ships going out to sea. Since Steward Zhao can see that what I have said is true, can you consider the matter of the quota? Li Fan asked. Steward Zhao tapped his finger on the table a few times before saying, You're a newcomer with no roots, so if I were to risk handing over the fleet to you, it would definitely cause a lot of dissatisfaction. How about this, the next time you go out to sea, you can follow along. If you really manage to salvage treasure every time you go out to sea, then it won't take more than a few times for the crew to be convinced of you. At that time, you can then take over the fleet in name. Even if your harvest is large enough, it's not impossible for me to persuade the island master to distribute a quota from Steward Qian over to you. Steward Zhao is considerate. Li Fan had no objection. So, the conversation between the two of them proceeded smoothly. The details of their conversation were unknown to the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion, but when they heard that Li Fan had convinced Steward Zhao and obtained a spot for the next sea expedition, they were shocked. Could it be that the man didn't lie, and he really has the confidence to command a fleet? In the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion, the manager muttered, her eyes flickering. I wonder what he relies on. Sun Zhong was also very puzzled. No matter how he looked at Li Fan, he was an ordinary middle-aged man. Send the land deed of the vacant small courtyard on the eastern street of the city to him, the manager suddenly said. Sun Zhong did not react for a moment. Chapter 28. Tempest ravages the sky. Manager, this doesn't seem good, Sun Zhong lamented, feeling a pang of sorrow. We acquired that yard with a hefty sum, intending to bribe Steward Zhao. We can't just give it away so easily to this lad, can we? If we are to give it to him, we should wait until he helps us seize the fleet. The woman in yellow garments replied, do what you're told. If we wait too long, I'm afraid the gift will be much bigger than a courtyard. Muttering to himself privately, Sun Zhong ultimately dared not defy the orders of his superior and obediently sent the land deed to Li Fan's hands. Li Fan didn't refuse. There was no need to move anything either. He moved into the eastern street courtyard that very day. Compared to the slums outside the city, the surroundings of this yard were significantly better. At the alley's entrance, official personnel from Luli Mansion maintained order and security. The small courtyard was also more spacious than the previous residence, comprising a main house with 3 rooms and 2 wings on each side. Although not overly large, it was sufficient for Li Fan's single occupancy. Turning down several maid servants sent by the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion, Li Fan settled down in the courtyard and patiently awaited the fleet's next departure. He initially thought it wouldn't take long, but an unforeseen event postponed the departure indefinitely. A calamity approached at a tempest. Li Fan had heard numerous discussions about storms on Luli Island during conversations among its residents, but he hadn't paid much attention. He thought it would be similar to typhoons or hurricanes he had encountered before crossing over, just a larger storm. However, when the tempest actually arrived, Li Fan realized he was sorely mistaken. On that day, while Li Fan was practicing the cleansing heart mantra, as usual in his home, he suddenly heard booming sounds outside. The strange and shrill sound dominated the island's sky, quickly spreading across the entire Luli Island. Quick, get back home. The tempest is coming. May the Immortal Master protect us, protect us. Mother, where are you? Come home quickly. Chaos erupted on the island, with panicked and fearful cries filling the air. Li Fan was momentarily puzzled. Suddenly, he saw a blue curtain of light in the sky above Luli Island. The light screen resembled an inverted giant bowl, spanning the entire island and covering everything within. The island protection formation has been activated. No need to panic. Stay at home and don't go out. A clear female voice accompanied the appearance of the light screen, spreading across the island. May the Immortal Master be merciful. Listening to the chorus of voices around him, Li Fan looked up and carefully observed the island protection formation. The blue light flickered, isolating the island from the outside. On the light screen, obscure characters, unfamiliar to Li Fan, occasionally appeared, looking extraordinarily mysterious. Like the cries of ghosts, the howling winds gradually started, resonating in the air. The ripples on the light screen rippled, blocking the fierce wind. Inside the light screen, it was calm. The sky began to pour down torrential rain. The raindrops were so dense they almost formed a line, striking the light screen. Ripples spread on the light screen, deflecting all of the torrential rain. Outside, the storm roared, but inside, it was tranquil. So, this is the power of an immortal. Li Fan admired secretly. Although he had witnessed the destructive power of Ko Hong and Dao Xuanzi, who could both obliterate an entire city with ease, seeing this island protection formation still made him eagerly yearn for it. The tremendous waves continued for nearly half an hour. Gradually, the rain subsided, and the wind diminished. Just when Li Fan thought the tempest was about to end, he suddenly sensed something was amiss. The sky not only didn't clear up but darkened further. Countless dark clouds appeared from nowhere, layer upon layer, seemingly endless, pressing down towards the island. In an instant, the heavens and the earth turned pitch black. The thick dark clouds seemed within arm's reach, almost tangible. The clouds appeared to be brewing something, plunging Luli Island into a brief silence. The silence was soon shattered. Boom! A thunderous sound exploded near Li Fan's ears. Boom! 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 Deafening roars, like thunder, erupted from all directions, incessant and unending. Like an endless symphony without a conclusion, it reverberated through the heavens and the earth. In the midst of this tremendous sound, Li Fan felt his head spinning, eyes dazzling, and chest pressed as if by a massive boulder, making it difficult to breathe. Touching his nose, he realized fresh blood was flowing. Li Fan was alarmed, planning to rush back into the house for cover, but suddenly, he felt the ground violently shaking beneath his feet. As the world spun around him, Li Fan quickly lost balance and fell to the ground. It seemed like being continuously struck by something. The earth trembled violently. Looking up, Li Fan saw a sight that almost took his breath away. A wall of water, of indeterminable height, occupied his entire field of vision. Under the assault of the roaring winds, it descended towards Luli Island with a force that could shatter anything. The monstrous wave was about to fall, burying everything beneath it. Li Fan couldn't help but raise his hands instinctively to shield himself. Boom! The wave crashed against the blue light screen. The light screen distorted for a moment, as if it was going to shatter. However, after a burst of blue light, the light screen returned to normal. Like rocks by the seashore, standing firm amidst the huge waves. Unable to engulf Luli Island, the furious sea seemed to be infuriated. Wave after wave relentlessly assaulted, a tempest of the last days. Li Fan, lost in this chaotic scene, felt as if an era had passed. When the tempest finally subsided after what seemed like an eternity, survivors on the island knelt down, weeping in gratitude. Li Fan, under the incessant discussions of the islanders, received even more astonishing news. This tempest experienced by Luli Island was considered relatively small in scale. 15 years ago, the tempest's might was several times stronger than this one. At that time, the island protection formation almost couldn't hold, forcing it to shrink its protective range. Thus, after the tempest, the areas not protected by the formation were ravaged. The island's size was reduced to a third of its original size. In the following decade and a half after the tempest, Luli Island gathered survivors and slowly began to recover. A tempest, so this is what a tempest is. Li Fan was profoundly moved. The power of nature was truly terrifying. Chapter 29, Setting Sail. In the days following the recent storm, all residents of Luli Island received instructions to inspect the protective barrier for any damage. The method of inspection was quite simple. Luli Mansion provided a spiritual talisman to each household. They were instructed to hang the talisman in their homes for a couple of days and watch for any red light emissions. For more remote and secluded areas on the island, dedicated individuals were assigned to ensure the barrier's integrity. Under the will of the Immortal Master, and for the sake of their own safety, all activities on the island were temporarily suspended to prioritize the maintenance of the protective barrier. In the past, the Immortal Master oversaw the maintenance of the barrier, but this time, the Immortal Master had to return to the 10,000 Immortals Island to obtain more spirit stones, as they had been nearly depleted. Li Fan also received a spiritual talisman and hung it in his home. By carefully sensing it, he could faintly perceive an invisible ripple emanating from it. After expanding outward for a certain distance, it seemed to encounter some obstacle, causing it to return. As it returned, the talisman emitted a blue light for a moment before going dim. A few breaths later, the blue light went out. The fluctuations continued to be generated again. The cycle began again and again. If there is no red light emitted, that must mean this node of the protective formation is fine. Li Fan recalled the other party's instructions in his mind when he was handed out the spirit talismans. This protective barrier is so vast yet incredibly intricate. It's hard to imagine how it was constructed. 10,000 Immortals Island is said to be the gathering place for the majority of cultivators in this Kongyunsi region. It's shrouded in mystery, and even Steward Zhao knows little about it. All I know is that once the common people on the island cleanse themselves of impurities and cultivate their inner energy, an Immortal Master will descend and take them to 10,000 Immortals Island. It seems like that's my goal in this world. But there were steps to be taken, and the first was to secure a spot in the expeditionary fleet, which would provide the opportunity to enter the pure body spirit pool and purify his body. Li Fan had waited for hundreds of years, a little more patience wouldn't hurt. Time passed quietly amidst the anxious prayers of the island's residents. 5 days later, the long-awaited news arrived. The protective barrier remained intact. With the return of the Immortal Master, who had brought sufficient spirit stones, the island's residents finally breathed a collective sigh of relief. Life on Luli Island gradually returned to normal. Over the next few months, survivors from other islands came to Luli Island seeking refuge. Only a few of them survived the recent storm, as most of their island's inhabitants perished. Upon learning that Luli Island had an Immortal Master in residence, these refugees couldn't hide their envy. The Kongyunsi was vast, with countless islands of various sizes. Only islands with special resources had Immortal Masters. During these months, Li Fan remained diligent. He practiced the cleansing heart mantra every day, and finally, he began to see some results. Name: Li Fan. Realm: mortal. Physical age: 4188 sa. Mental age: 504 1119 sa. Both his physical age and mental age had increased again, albeit not by much. Still, Li Fan felt encouraged by the progress. From then on, Li Fan practiced even more diligently. Besides eating, he spent most of his time practicing the mantra. After another month of consistent practice, Li Fan received the news sent by Steward Zhao. The storms in the Kongyunsi had finally subsided, and the next expeditionary fleet was about to set sail. 3 days later, at the Luli Island dock, Luli Island's ships were even larger than the Taiyan boat's second form, measuring a staggering 200 to 300 meters in length. Over a dozen of these massive ships were lined up on the sea, creating a spectacular sight. Due to the recent storm and the outstanding debts owed by Luli Island, the island's master ordered the entire fleet to set sail this time. This was an extraordinary event because, for safety reasons, only 1 or 2 fleets typically set sail at a time. The dock was filled with residents who had come to witness this grand occasion. Occasionally, they spotted familiar faces among the crew and enthusiastically waved to them. Li Fan followed Steward Zhao's people onto a ship named the Kangyuan. Among the crew, many were like Li Fan, setting sail for the first time. Their faces were filled with excitement and the hope of sudden wealth. However, the seasoned sailors appeared quite the opposite. Instead of excitement, their faces were marred with worry, and they couldn't stop complaining. I don't know what got into the island master's head to make us undergo this assessment. If our fleet has the lowest harvest this time, we'll be marked as unqualified and lose the right to set sail in the future. What are we going to do? It's all because of that storm. I heard that Coral Island in the south was flattened because of a damaged protective barrier. And now, we have to pay the tribute that Coral Island owed. What a mess. How are we going to survive in the future? I heard it's only temporary. We just need to make up for the previous debts. The sailors lamented, and the atmosphere on the ship became gloomy. Look at you all moping around. Why not think about the positive side? There are rewards for the top performers, you know. The share of the harvest has been increased from 30% to 50%. 50%? Do you realize what that means? If we make a big catch, we won't have to set sail for the rest of our lives. Just as the sailors were discussing, a dark-skinned man walked over and scolded them. Captain, do you have a plan? The sailors asked eagerly. They were clearly familiar with this man and trusted his leadership. Don't worry, this time, we have someone capable on board this time. I guarantee we'll return with a full haul, the captain said proudly, pointing at Li Fan, who stood behind him. He looks so clean. Has he ever been out to sea before? The sailors looked at Li Fan and shook their heads in disbelief. Are you all blind? Don't you recognize talent? This person was specially invited by Steward Zhao. He's going to take over our ship soon. Be more respectful. The captain scolded them angrily as if he were truly upset. Hearing the captain's words, the crew on the Kangyuan erupted into discussion and skepticism, with many of them showing disbelief. This young man, is he capable? He looks inexperienced. However, the dark-skinned captain, with a satisfied smile on his face, turned to Li Fan. It seemed his scheme had succeeded. Chapter 30. Treasures of the Deep Sea. Haobo, you've been the captain of the Kangyuan for almost 10 years. How can you just agree like that? You saved my life, Haobo. If you want to leave, I, Lu San, will be the first to object. Exactly. Why not throw him into the sea to feed the fish once we're out at sea? It's perfectly normal for someone to die at sea. The crew on the ship was stirred up, and Li Fan seemed to have become a public enemy. The man used his hands to pacify the crew, saying, "Calm down, everyone. Although I, Zhang Haobo, know everyone holds me in great esteem, the Kangyuan is Steward Zhao's property, and we are all just working for him. Now that Steward Zhao says he wants a change, what can I do?" Saying this only made things worse. Zhang Haobo's words further infuriated the crew. Their eyes turned red, glaring at Li Fan with murderous intent. Li Fan sneered inwardly. He could see through the tactics used by this man named Zhang Haobo. They were far too feeble to escape his notice. Praising Li Fan on the surface was to incite distrust among the crew towards Li Fan. Speaking for Li Fan on the surface was to stir up dissatisfaction among the crew. Expressing his powerlessness on the surface was to encourage the crew to unite against Li Fan. Hypocrisy at its finest. These were just petty political maneuvers. Li Fan, with a fearless face, walked in front of the crew, standing tall and loudly declaring, "If you all don't trust me, do you not trust Steward Zhao's judgment? Moreover, we are about to set sail this time, just watch my methods. I will definitely not disappoint everyone." Li Fan's voice was loud, drowning out the clamor of the crowd. The crew, seeing Li Fan's extraordinary momentum, were momentarily suppressed and no one stepped forward to argue. Li Fan didn't give them a chance. After bidding farewell, he took the lead and entered the cabin alone, leaving behind the crew with wide eyes and a sullen-faced Zhang Haobo. The group whispered among themselves. Could that kid really have some skills? Perhaps, it's possible. Steward Zhao's eyes are extraordinary, he rarely makes a wrong judgment. He doesn't seem like an ordinary person. ... What, you believe that every time we go out to sea, you can lead us to find treasure? I don't believe it. You're obviously just using connections to snatch the position of captain of our fleet. Did they think I'm ignorant? Since he's already said it, I want to see how he'll end up. Zhang Haobo was secretly resentful, looking at his subordinates who were taken in by Li Fan's words, feeling even more frustrated. Sail, head out to sea, he shouted angrily. The Kangyuan set off without wind, leaving the port and heading into the open sea. The Kangyuan didn't rely on wind or manpower, but a set of miniature formations powered by spiritual stones. The ship was equipped with spirit detectors. When a nearby area showed signs of a school of luli fish, the detectors would emit signals. However, the sea was vast, and the range the detectors could sense was limited. So, experienced sailors were needed to first find the approximate area where the fish might be. In a typical year, the activity areas of the luli fish were relatively regular, making them easier to catch. But if there were raging storms and the fish migrated, all previous experience became useless. It was like finding a needle in a haystack, purely relying on luck. And it seemed like the Kangyuan wasn't very lucky this time. Half a month passed, and apart from catching some ordinary fish and finding some common sea minerals, there was not much of a significant catch. Not only were the crew members all frowning, but Zhang Haobo was also getting anxious. After all, there were penalties for the last place this time. Compared to other jobs on the island, the work of the sailors going to sea was low risk and high reward. No one wanted to lose out like this. The island's rule is to return within a month. We've only caught this little this time, it's very likely we'll have the least catch. Let's hope for a turning point in the next few days. May the immortals bless us. Zhang Haobo looked at the calm and deep sea, feeling helpless. Just then, he heard footsteps behind him. Turning around, Zhang Haobo saw Li Fan walking towards him. What, are you finally willing to come out of the cabin? If it weren't for the fact that you still eat every day, I would have thought you were dead in there. Since they set sail, Li Fan had been staying in his room and not communicating with anyone. Zhang Haobo was in a bad mood and didn't have a good expression towards him. Li Fan didn't pay attention to his impolite words. Instead, he gazed into the distant sea with a serious expression. He just stood there, not saying a word. Zhang Haobo saw Li Fan's strange behavior and felt a bit uneasy, looking in the direction he was staring at, but saw nothing unusual on the sea's surface. Li Fan's expression became even more serious. Yet, he remained silent. After a while, Zhang Haobo couldn't bear it and asked, "What are you looking at?" Li Fan was startled and turned around, full of regret, staring at Zhang Haobo angrily. "What are you pretending for?" Zhang Haobo was a little guilty but persisted. "I want a small boat." Li Fan didn't answer him, but turned his head and said in a deep voice, "I've sensed treasures." "What?" Zhang Haobo was a bit confused at first. "What?" But he quickly reacted and exclaimed, "Are you not kidding? Quick, prepare a boat for me. I've seen treasures shining in the deep sea, waiting for me to salvage," Li Fan said solemnly. Zhang Haobo was hesitating, but then Li Fan said, "The opportunity is fleeting. The brilliance of the treasures is dimming. I'm about to lose its position." Zhang Haobo immediately woke up. "Hurry, prepare the boat." The Kangyuan was equipped with several small boats, generally used to explore narrow passages or venture into unknown and dangerous sea areas. And when the small boat was ready and lowered, Li Fan sailed away alone. It was only when the small boats were put down and Li Fan was driving away alone that Zhang Haobo suddenly came to his senses. He didn't know how he could have believed Li Fan's words just now. Sensing treasure buried under the deep sea. How could that be possible? He was about to say something when he heard Li Fan shouting from afar. "Don't follow me, wait for my signal." "Why?" Zhang Haobo couldn't help but shout and ask. "You are too noisy, it's easy to interrupt my detection," Li Fan responded. The corner of Zhang Haobo's mouth twitched, but recalling the scene just now when Li Fan glared at him, he seemed to think that perhaps the other party had not told a lie. Time passed, and 2 hours had passed since Li Fan left in his boat alone. Maybe he ran away alone. A crew member asked anxiously as he looked in the direction Li Fan was leaving, unable to help himself. "What nonsense are you talking about? The sea is vast, and he didn't bring any provisions. Where could he possibly go?" Zhang Haobo scolded the crew member and was about to say more when he saw a red signal in the sky from a distance. "Quick, move the ship there," Zhang Haobo immediately ordered. The Kangyuan activated its power and quickly arrived at the location of the signal. There, Li Fan stood on the small boat, looking exhausted. "The treasures are right here," he said to everyone. Zhang Haobo and his men looked at each other, unsure if it was true or not. A while later, Zhang Haobo gritted his teeth and said, "Get into the water. Release the nets." Amidst the doubt of everyone, 1 crate, 2 crates. A total of 16 crates of gold, silver, and jewels were slowly hoisted up. Chapter 31, Returning to Luli Island. Under the clear moonlight, all the crew members on the Kangyuan ship had red eyes and were panting heavily. Until now, they all seemed as if they were in a dream. 16 large boxes filled with gold and silver treasures were quietly placed on the deck. Some were still not at ease and pinched themselves. Feeling the pain, they stared at the treasures on the ground, unwilling to shift their gaze for a moment. Li Fan didn't actually brag. He really returned with a full load. However, the extent of this full load far exceeded everyone's imagination. Various jade ornaments, gold and silver, jewels, and other treasures filled the boxes, dazzling everyone. They had spent half of their lives making a living by fishing at sea. Even in the most beautiful dreams, they had never seen such a surreal scene. As for Zhang Haobo, his mind was completely blank. It's actually true. That guy can really find treasures sunken at the bottom of the sea. Such ability, such ability. Having lived on Luli Island for over 20 years, Zhang Haobo naturally knew that aside from the Immortals, there were some ordinary people in the world who possessed incredible abilities. For example, communicating with the birds in the sky, foreseeing disasters in advance, being able to breathe underwater for extended periods, or seeing through lies, in the case of Steward Zhao. However, these extraordinary individuals were few in number. They were either entrusted with important tasks on various islands or were taken as servants by the Immortals and brought to the island of 10,000 Immortals. They were truly rare to come by. Unexpectedly, this Li Fan was also one of these extraordinary individuals. Suddenly, Zhang Haobo thought that Li Fan had recently moved to Luli Island. Could it be that he had been forced to move here because his original island was destroyed by a disaster? It made sense. He was a newcomer, so no wonder Steward Zhao regarded him highly, even though he was just a new resident. Everything made sense. At this moment, Zhang Haobo regretted deeply. Zhang Haobo, oh Zhang Haobo, you had a rare opportunity to encounter a benefactor. Not only did you fail to seize it, but you even mistakenly thought that the other party came to steal your little ship fleet. The more Zhang Haobo thought about it, the more regretful he felt. He wished he could just slap himself. No, I must apologize quickly. Immediately, right away. Such extraordinary individuals are honored guests wherever they go. If he gains power and bears a grudge against my actions from a few days ago. Zhang Haobo gave himself a shake and was about to go to Li Fan's room to apologize. Is it just my imagination? Why do I feel like these boxes haven't been submerged for long? Weird, we didn't see the sunken ship when we salvaged them. It's probably drifted here along the seabed currents, right? Or maybe it was blown up to the sky by the wind disaster and then fell into the sea here. Why worry about all that? As long as these treasures are real. In the whispers of his subordinates, Zhang Haobo hurriedly left. In the room, after Li Fan had politely sent Zhang Haobo away, he stretched his weary body. Naturally, those 16 boxes of treasures were thrown down by him. He came alone to a deserted area, unfurled the Tian boat, moved a small part of the treasures he had plundered from Daxuan into the boat, threw them into the sea, and finally sent the signal, allowing the crew of the Kengyuan to come and salvage them. The boxes were indeed heavy. If it weren't for him constantly practicing the cleansing heart mantra over the past few months, coupled with the invisible nourishment of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, his strength wouldn't have increased significantly and he would probably not have been able to handle it alone. Even so, after the matter was finished, Li Fan felt like he was falling apart. For the first time, I made a big splash. I won't need to throw this much in the future. Li Fan calculated in his mind. As for Zhang Haobo, Li Fan didn't care about him at all. For Zhang Haobo, the position of the fleet's captain was the foundation of his life. If someone suddenly wanted to snatch it away, it would be strange if he didn't react. Moreover, the tricks he used were childish to Li Fan. In Li Fan's eyes, Zhang Haobo simply didn't matter. He didn't have that kind of importance at all. In the end, he was just a simple fisherman. For Li Fan, the fleet he valued was just a small stepping stone in his plans. Ants do not know the aspirations of humans. Li Fan shook his head and dismissed the thought, focusing on practicing the cleansing heart mantra. After obtaining the treasure, the Kengyuan no longer fished. They immediately turned the bow and headed back to Luli Island. After all, the harvest this time was so significant that the crew wouldn't feel at ease until they safely returned to the island. Full throttle was engaged, and in just 2 days, Luli Island was in sight. After returning, let's not dock immediately. Lu San, quietly get into the water and then go to inform Steward Zhao at his residence. Let him personally send someone to count, Zhang Haobo instructed the crew solemnly. If there were no surprises, they should have the most significant share of the harvest in this expedition. According to the rules, they were entitled to 50%. When it came to an outsider counting, who could guarantee there wouldn't be any withholding or intentional omissions? Losing even a little would be deeply distressing for them. They couldn't trust anyone who wasn't part of their crew. The crew nodded one after another, watching the routine counting ship approaching the island, immediately becoming alert. Zhang Haobo, what do you mean? Not letting us on the ship? It seemed that there was some conflict between the other party and Zhang Haobo, and there was a hint of anger in their words. However, Zhang Haobo didn't pay any attention. Seeing Zhang Haobo's lack of response, the other person became more mocking. Judging by your ship's draft, I'm afraid you're returning empty-handed this time. It seems your tenure as a captain is coming to an end. If you really can't make it, come to my ship. I guarantee I won't let you starve. The crew of the Kangyuan, hearing their leader being insulted, became furious and was about to retort. But Zhang Haobo stopped them. Regardless of what the other side said afterward, Zhang Haobo acted as if he hadn't heard, waiting for Steward Zhao's representative to arrive. It seems that Zhang Haobo's ability to hold on to the position of the Kangyuan ship's captain is not without reason. He's not as pitiful as I imagined, but his background and experiences have limited him. Li Fan nodded to himself after witnessing this scene. The commotion on the dock attracted quite a few onlookers, and people were pointing and discussing the Kangyuan ship. Fortunately, the standoff between the two sides didn't last long. Soon, Steward Zhao personally arrived with his men. Chapter 32, Treasure Seer Physique. As the 16 boxes of riches were unloaded in full view of everyone at the pier, the entire dock was abuzz. You see, the last time a fleet had such a huge harvest it was just a few months ago. When did salvaging treasure from the depths of the sea become so easy? Or perhaps, had the waters near Luli Island become so rich that treasures were abundant everywhere? The people on the island were deeply skeptical. Soon, the excitement intensified. Who wouldn't want to become rich overnight? Countless excited individuals rushed back home to share what they had witnessed at the pier. They too wanted to set sail. They too wanted to salvage the treasures from the sea floor. Thus, the news of the enormous treasure gained by the Kangyuan sailed like wildfire and quickly spread across the entire Luli Island. Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. The woman in yellow was meticulously appraising a new batch of items when she suddenly heard hurried footsteps. Innkeeper, innkeeper! Sun Zhong burst in without a greeting. What's going on? The woman in yellow was somewhat puzzled. Treasure, more than a dozen boxes. Kangyuan, Sun Zhong gasped, his words disjointed. The woman in yellow was unimpressed. It's just a dozen or so boxes of treasures. Is it necessary to make such a fuss? To digest these things on the island, they'll have to go through our Heavenly Treasure Pavilion's channels. While the woman was speaking, her expression suddenly changed. Wait, did you say Kangyuan? The ship that uncle named Li Fan is staying on? Sun Zhong nodded repeatedly. The woman in yellow was stunned for a while before she regained her senses. No wonder that guy was so confident in convincing Steward Zhao. He was absolutely certain that he could find treasure as long as he set sail. That's right, that's right. This ability of his is just like our Heavenly Treasure Pavilion's manager. Sun Zhong said with envy and admiration. Luckily, you, the manager, had the foresight and gave him a small courtyard before. You've established a relationship with him. When he returns from this sea voyage, he will surely become famous. If we want to win him over again, it will probably cost us a lot. The woman in yellow interrupted Sun Zhong and instructed, go arrange it immediately, see when you can arrange a meal with him. Also, send someone to deliver the land deed to him. Sun Zhong was taken aback, but this time he didn't say anything and hurriedly went downstairs to handle it. In the room, only the woman in yellow was left speaking softly. Treasure Seer Physique. The rumored Treasure Seer Physique could sense the presence of rare treasures within a certain range of oneself. The manager of the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion, Yin Yuting, the elder sister of the woman in yellow, possessed this special physique. It was precisely relying on this heaven-defying ability that Yin Yuting established the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion, a large commercial organization that spanned across the Kongyun Sea, from nothing in only 10 years. Li Fan had no idea that he had been mistaken by the people of the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion as a treasure seer physique. At this moment, he was in the residence of Steward Zhao. Your talent is indeed extraordinary. Your first sea voyage resulted in 16 crates of treasures. It truly surprised me. Steward Zhao's face was full of smiles, exclaiming in admiration. Li Fan smiled but didn't answer. He knew that Steward Zhao had the ability to discern the truth, so he skillfully changed the subject. The harvest this time is indeed substantial, but it's probably going to be difficult to have this much in the future. Steward Zhao was indifferent. That's understandable. You can't have such luck every time. He then continued, however, with just the harvest from this time, it's enough for me to organize a separate fleet for you. Li Fan nodded. In that case, thank you, Steward Zhao. I heard that you've been diligently trying to obtain a spot in the pure body spirit pool, Steward Zhao said suddenly while sipping his tea. That's correct. I have gone through many things in my life and only now understand that worldly fame and fortune are fleeting. Even the richest man will turn into dust after 100 years. Only by seeking immortality and achieving longevity can one not have lived in vain in this world. Li Fan sighed deeply, feeling deeply emotional. Steward Zhao stared at Li Fan for a long time before sighing, "You have the aspiration to become an immortal at such a young age. I'm not as good as you." Seemingly reminded of something, Steward Zhao's face displayed a complex expression. "More than a decade ago, when I was about your age, I coincidentally saved an immortal. The immortal asked if I was willing to follow him in cultivation, but I knew I had already passed the prime age for cultivation. Even if I cultivated, success was not guaranteed. Moreover, as one grows older, the miasma within the body also deepens, and attempting to remove it becomes increasingly painful. So, I chose to take up a managerial position. Now, as the years go by, I have a faint sense of regret. However, the mistake has been made, and there's no cure for lost opportunities," Steward Zhao sighed with regret. He looked at Li Fan again and praised, "Among the tens of thousands of ordinary people on Luli Island, individuals like you are truly a minority. You flatter me. I wonder, Steward Zhao, about the matter regarding a spot in the pure body spirit pool. I can't help you with this. The opening of the pure body spirit pool requires an immortal to preside, and the spots are decided by the immortal master. A year before the pool is opened, the immortal master will announce the required materials. Each family collects and submits the materials according to the contribution level, determining the spots," Manager Zhao explained, shaking his head. "But you don't need to worry. Heavenly Treasure Pavilion has branches on various islands in the Kongyun Sea. In terms of collecting materials, there are very few on Luli Island who can surpass them." Li Fan thought of the image of the woman in yellow and nodded. After spending some more time with Steward Zhao, Li Fan took his leave. As soon as he returned to the courtyard, Sun Zhang arrived, apparently waiting for a long time. "Is your manager inviting me to dinner?" It was indeed a coincidence. Li Fan was just thinking of meeting her again, so he readily agreed. As for the land deed that Sun Zhang brought, Li Fan didn't accept it. He planned to meet the woman in yellow again in the evening. As night fell, the lights began to glow. Li Fan arrived at the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. There was only one person in the room. However, she had changed into a purple robe and was not wearing a veil anymore. "Allow me to formally introduce myself. I am the manager of the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion on Luli Island, Yin Yuzhen." Li Fan. Yin Yuzhen chuckled. "You are indeed straightforward. I'm just a mere mortal, there's really nothing worth mentioning," Li Fan said frankly. "Is the treasure seer physique also insignificant in your eyes?" Yin Yuzhen looked at Li Fan with a wry smile. "Oh, I don't know about the treasure seer physique," Li Fan said calmly, though he was intrigued. "You mean the treasure seer physique isn't worth mentioning to you?" Yin Yuzhen furrowed her brows, gritting her teeth. But when she saw that Li Fan really seemed to not know, she reluctantly explained the matter of the treasure seer physique to him. "In that case, your sister also possesses a treasure seer physique." Li Fan squinted his eyes. "How old is she this year? What does she look like? Where was she 20 years ago? And where is she now?" Chapter 33. Two Talented Sisters. Li Fan asked several seemingly inexplicable questions, leaving Yin Yuzhen a bit bewildered, not understanding why he was asking these. Suddenly, she seemed to think of a possibility, her face turning somewhat pale as she stared at Li Fan. "Could it be that you are the long-lost father of his sisters?" But soon, she denied it herself. "No, your appearance is nothing like ours. It's just curiosity," Li Fan said indifferently, not paying attention to the strange thinking of this young girl. "I understand, curious about someone of the same kind, it's human nature," Yin Yuzhen said, nodding repeatedly as if she understood. Li Fan couldn't be bothered to explain further. Yin Yuzhen sighed and said slowly, "We were originally from the northern Night Island. Our parents passed away due to disaster when we were young, leaving only my sister and me to rely on each other. In my memory, my sister and I could only beg for a living every day, barely managing to get by. But at some point, my sister began to always find valuable things in different places. Our lives gradually improved day by day, and later, my sister single-handedly established the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion," Yin Yuzhen recalled. "Unfortunately, I haven't seen my sister for several years," she said, full of nostalgia. Oh, where did she go? Li Fan furrowed his brow. 3 years ago, my sister caught the eye of a passing immortal and was taken away. At first, she would send messages to let us know she was safe. But later, we never heard from her again, Yin Yuzhen said, holding her chin in her hands, looking pitiful. Taken away by an immortal? Could it be that she was taken to cultivate immortality? Li Fan couldn't help asking. That's what I hope for. In the letters my sister sent back before, she used a secret code that only the two of us understood, telling me that her current situation was very dangerous. If she doesn't contact us in the future, it means she might have met with misfortune. She asked me not to look for her anymore, Yin Yuzhen sighed, her eyes showing a hint of sadness. Li Fan couldn't help but ask after hearing this, can it be that it's her special physique, the treasure seer physique, that has attracted trouble? This is also something I can't figure out. Although the treasure seer physique is indeed very powerful, being able to sense treasures within a certain range of oneself, this ability is also limited. My sister is only immortal and can sense only things that are of some value to mortals. These treasures, in the eyes of those immortals, are essentially equivalent to broken copper and iron. It's not like there weren't any immortal masters who sensed my sister's talent before, but in the end, they didn't take it very seriously. I don't know why, but in the end, she was still taken away by that immortal master. Yin Yuzhen sighed again, a hint of sadness showing in her eyes. Although my sister is in danger, she has left behind her foundation. The Heavenly Treasure Pavilion, which she worked hard to build for most of her life, must not be destroyed in my hands, Yin Yuzhen said, staring at Li Fan with big eyes. That's why I came to you today. Li Fan raised his eyebrows but didn't say anything. Yin Yuzhen explained to herself, I don't have my sister's magical abilities. After my sister disappeared, the business of the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion declined day by day. I also misjudged a few items later and failed to realize they were forgeries, resulting in another significant loss. The elders gradually became dissatisfied with me and even considered joining forces with outsiders to drive me out and divide the assets of the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. Fortunately, they still had some concerns about the immortal who took away my sister, so they hesitated and didn't take action. So, I came to Luli Island to explore new markets and avoid trouble for a while. Originally, I thought of developing here for a few years, accumulating some strength, and then going back to settle accounts with them. But I didn't expect to encounter another treasure seer physique on Luli Island. Yin Yuzhen was somewhat excited. With your help, I will definitely regain control of the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. Why should I help you? Li Fan remained unmoved. I'm not interested in the affairs of your Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. My only desire lies in cultivating immortality. Before, you promised that if I helped you profit on a fleet voyage, you would assist me in obtaining a spot for the pure body spirit pool. You're not going back on your word now, are you? Yin Yuzhen seemed to be mentally prepared for Li Fan's response as she nodded. Our Heavenly Treasure Pavilion conducts business with integrity. What we promise, we will certainly fulfill. However, she paused, looking at Li Fan with a cunning expression. However what? Li Fan's face darkened. Yin Yuzhen smiled lightly. Even if you can enter the pure body spirit pool, so what? It's not an easy task to remove the miasma from your body. Almost only half of the people who enter the pool every year are successful. And the older you are, the higher the failure rate. You're not young anymore. Are you sure you have 100% certainty of success? Each person only has one chance to enter the pool in their lifetime. If you fail, you might bid farewell to cultivating immortality forever. I know that success with the pure body spirit pool is not guaranteed. But a 50% success rate is worth trying for me. However, from what you're saying, Li Fan looked at Yin Yuzhen, his eyes narrowed. That's right. Yin Yuzhen had a triumphant expression on her face, knowing that Li Fan had taken the bait. In the last letter from my sister, a pill named the body cleansing pill was sent. According to what my sister mentioned in the letter, by taking this pill, the probability of successfully removing the miasma from the body will greatly increase. If combined with the pure body spirit pool, even at your age, there's a high chance of success. With such a miraculous pill, why haven't you taken it until now? Li Fan couldn't help asking. Not everyone is as determined as you to cultivate immortality. My wish is to do good business and protect the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion left behind by my sister, Yin Yuzhen replied. Everyone has their own aspirations, Li Fan nodded slowly. So, do you agree? Yin Yuzhen looked at Li Fan with hopeful eyes. Allow me to consider this. I will give you an answer in 3 days, Li Fan contemplated for a moment, not agreeing immediately. All right, I'll wait for your message, Yin Yuzhen said, somewhat disappointed, but still nodded. Farewell. I hope I didn't make a mistake this time. Yin Yuzhen watched Li Fan's retreating figure, her expression becoming serious, murmuring softly. When dealing with Li Fan, Yin Yuzhen had been playing the role of a junior and a young girl. Her intuition told her that Li Fan didn't dislike her acting this way. Moreover, interacting with Li Fan in the capacity of a junior would make things easier to succeed. Yin Yuzhen wasn't like her sister, possessing the ability to sense treasures innately. However, she had her own unique traits. Apart from her sister, Yin Yuzhen was the only one who knew that she could vaguely sense the good or bad outcomes of events since childhood. It was precisely relying on her sister's treasure-sensing physique and her own ability to anticipate fortune and avoid calamity that the two sisters were able to grow up smoothly and prosper. Chapter 34. The Cleansing Heart Mantra's Effect. Li Fan inquired discreetly and confirmed that Yin Yuzhen was not lying about the body-cleansing pill. So, 3 days later, he met Yin Yuzhen again and agreed to her request. Both parties agreed that before the Pure Body Spirit Pool opened, Li Fan would help the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion collect a certain amount of treasures every once in a while. When the pool was opened, Yin Yuzhen would give the body cleansing pill to Li Fan. Of course, to show sincerity, Yin Yuzhen brought out the land deed. Since they had an agreement, Li Fan didn't hesitate and accepted it. Thus, Li Fan moved again. The property was located in the central part of Luli Island, surrounded by a bustling and lively environment. However, with its unique architectural structure and embellishments of vegetation, it was completely isolated from the noisy surroundings. Though in a bustling place, it felt as if it were deep in the mountains. The area of the building was several times larger than Li Fan's previous small courtyard. The artificial hills, lakes, flowers, plants, and trees inside needed care. Li Fan declined the maids sent by the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion and hired a few servants from the island to clean every 3 days. Yin Yuzhen was quite helpless about Li Fan's caution. Fortunately, Li Fan didn't overlook the agreed-upon matters. Over a year, Li Fan joined 3 official sea expeditions of Luli Island, each time bringing back several boxes of treasures, astonishing the whole island and winning a fleet quota for the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. Afterward, every time the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion's fleet set sail, Li Fan would go with them. Over the year, Heavenly Treasure Pavilion's earnings were overflowing, almost equal to the total profits of the previous 5 years. In the eyes of everyone in Heavenly Treasure Pavilion, Elder Li not only had great abilities, being able to find treasures on each expedition, but was also meticulous and decisive in his thinking. During one of the sea expeditions by the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion, a few crew members were tempted by the valuable items brought up from the sea. They planned to unite and kill for the treasures. Unexpectedly, Elder Li had already sensed the abnormality and struck preemptively before they could act, executing them all. The corpses were thrown into the sea, and their heads were strung together to deter others. Privately, people said that perhaps those crew members were just boasting recklessly after drinking, and they might not have had the courage to commit murder and theft. But just because there was this slight possibility, Elder Li didn't hesitate to kill them all. Moreover, the island's authorities not only didn't punish him, they instead praised Elder Li for his reasonable and effective protection of Luli Island's assets. Even when the islanders found out about it, they cursed those pirates for deserving their fate and praised Elder Li for his decisive action. Since then, there were no crew members in Heavenly Treasure Pavilion's fleet who dared to harbor evil intentions. Li Fan, of course, didn't care about what others thought of him. In order to completely control the fleet as soon as possible, harsh measures were necessary. He didn't have so much energy to waste on these worldly matters. During this year, whenever he had free time, he diligently cultivated the Cleansing Heart Mantra. It was not only because it could purify the miasma but also because Li Fan had discovered something that delighted him. The recharging progress of truth had accelerated. Before this, the recharge progress of truth could only increase naturally as time passed. It would reach 100% every 20 years, slowly rising to the upper limit of 200% after reaching 100%. In the previous 9 cycles, Li Fan had tried various methods to try to speed up the progress, but none had succeeded. Li Fan had left the land of immortal extinction and came to the cultivation world a little over a year ago. According to the previous pattern, the progress should be between 6% to 7%. However, Li Fan was pleasantly surprised to find that the progress had reached 15%. The charging speed had nearly doubled. Apart from the cleansing heart mantra, Li Fan did not engage in anything else that could possibly help with this. The only explanation is that cultivating the cleansing heart mantra can actually accelerate the charging progress of truth. Although the principle behind it was still unknown, this didn't hinder Li Fan from practicing even more diligently. With the display of the truth panel, every bit of progress could be clearly seen. This also kept Li Fan motivated, preventing him from losing motivation due to the long and repetitive cultivation. In addition to the charging progress, Li Fan's upper mental age limit also increased significantly. Name: Li Fan. Realm: mortal. Physical age: 42/95 sa. Mental age: 505 1210 sa. Virtualization charging progress: 115%. Anchor charging progress: 51%. Current anchor count: 1. Bound items: Jade Cosmos 1000 Variations Sutra, Taiyan Boat, Stone Tablet of Prohibition, damaged. Time passed quietly as Li Fan immersed himself in his practice. Soon, there was only 1 year left until the opening of the Pure Spirit Pool. On Luli Island, the list of needed supplies for this event was also announced. At this moment, Li Fan was studying this list with the people from Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. Everything else on this list is fine, but what is this starry sea quicksand? Li Fan frowned and asked after reading it once. Having worked for Heavenly Treasure Pavilion for a year, Li Fan had gained some insights, at least regarding the conventional ores and rare materials circulating in the Kongyun Sea. Not only was Sun Jiang at a loss, but even Yin Yuzhen, the manager of the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion, fell silent. The materials needed this time are all very common, except for this starry sea quicksand that I've never heard of. It seems that the key to competing for the slot this time lies in this starry sea quicksand, Sun Jiang said. I've done business for over 10 years and have never heard of this thing. Yin Yuzhen tapped the table lightly with her fingers. Looks like we need to ask the people from the Wanhua Chamber of Commerce about it. These people are very greedy. It's probably going to cost us a lot, Sun Jiang sighed. I am determined to get the Pure Body Spirit Pool slot, Li Fan said firmly. The Wanhua Chamber of Commerce wasn't a local business in the Kongyun Sea but instead came from a distant continent. It was said that the trading company was supported by immortals, allowing them to easily cross endless seas and come to this remote Kongyun Sea for business. Yin Yuzhen established a connection with the Wanhua Chamber of Commerce over a decade ago, and the two sides have engaged in trade over the years. It was through the Wanhua Chamber of Commerce that the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion could quickly digest the large number of treasures found by Li Fan and convert them into profits. We still have a year of preparation time. The Wanhua Chamber of Commerce's trading ship should pass through the Kongyun Sea in 3 months. At that time, I can contact them, Yin Yuzhen said. We can't solely rely on the Wanhua Chamber of Commerce. In the past year, Luli Island has gathered many disaster refugees from other islands. These refugees are from various places in the Kongyun Sea, and there might be someone who knows about this starry sea quicksand among them. We can inquire with them. Other forces on the island are also looking for this starry sea quicksand, so we also need to monitor them closely. If they find anything, we can take action accordingly, Li Fan decided. Chapter 35. Fruits are all preordained. With the announcement of the materials needed for the Pure Body Spirit Pool, the surface of Luli Island appeared calm, but there were already hidden undercurrents. Even ordinary people who didn't care about this matter knew that the major powers on the island were now searching for something called starry sea quicksand. After inquiring covertly without results, Li Fan unexpectedly received an unexpected guest one day. It was Xiao Heng, the person Li Fan had encountered when he first came to the cultivation world. Please have a seat, Li Fan said as he poured him a cup of tea. Xiao Heng observed Li Fan's current residence, his eyes filled with envy and nostalgia. I wonder what business you have with me, young brother. Li Fan had a good impression of Xiao Heng and asked kindly. Xiao Heng first looked around cautiously, then leaned in and said softly, I heard that Brother Li has also been looking for starry sea quicksand lately. Li Fan's eyes narrowed, indeed. I am already of an advanced age and want to cultivate, and my only reliance is the Pure Body Spirit Pool. Why, do you know about this item? Xiao Heng swallowed nervously and nodded, yes, when the Immortal Master descended to the land of immortal extinction, he promised that as long as the necessary materials were collected, a group of people could go to the cultivation world. Among them was starry sea quicksand. Li Fan was momentarily stunned. Afterward, he expressed his confusion. Is that so? Why don't I have any recollection of this? I asked those people from before, and they all claimed ignorance. Hence, my inquiry. Xiao Heng looked a bit embarrassed upon hearing this. At that time, when it was publicly announced, several items were already omitted from the list and allocated to the major families as reserved slots. My family was tasked with collecting the Starry Sea quicksand. Li Fan nodded thoughtfully. Go on, what conditions do you have? Li Fan got straight to the point. Seeing Li Fan being so direct, Xiao Heng felt a bit awkward, blushing slightly, and explained, back when you paid for Cheng Yu's burial, it was a favor to me. I shouldn't ask for this, but life here on Luli Island is too difficult. I don't have the same abilities as Brother Li. I still live in a poor area on the outskirts and have to do hard labor to sustain my daily life. Xiao Heng rambled on, but Li Fan lightly chuckled and interrupted him. No need for many words. I understand your predicament. I am determined to obtain this item. As long as you can provide clues and have any requests, feel free to mention them, and I will do my best to fulfill them. Xiao Heng was very grateful. In that case, I thank Brother Li in advance. He paused for a moment, then said somewhat sentimentally, actually, this item is not that rare. It's just that the term used by the Immortal Master is different from our ordinary language. Of course, if it weren't for the attached material descriptions that came with the list, I wouldn't have known. Essentially, the so-called Starry Sea quicksand is just meteoric iron from the heavens. Li Fan listened carefully, comprehending it all. Then, when Xiao Heng finished, Li Fan didn't forget his promise. Tell me, what do you want? Xiao Heng spoke in a low voice. I just want a decent courtyard and a slightly easier job. Of course, it would be even better if I could have a few maids. Li Fan had prepared himself for Xiao Heng's ambitious requests but was surprised to see how easily he could be satisfied. He chuckled and shook his head. I didn't expect the son of the Southern King to have such modest requests. Perhaps add a little more. I still have some influence at the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. Xiao Heng declined politely. I am aware of my abilities. Being able to live comfortably and not work so hard already satisfies me. If suddenly gaining wealth that attracts envy, it might bring disaster. Li Fan nodded and didn't insist further. After a few pleasantries, Xiao Heng took his leave. Do you have any plans for cultivation? After all, you've come all the way to this cultivation world through great hardships. Wouldn't it be a waste if you don't make use of this opportunity? Li Fan suddenly asked as they parted. Let's talk about it later. I'm not really interested in cultivation. When I practiced cleansing heart mantra, I felt nothing. I have no idea how long it will take to completely dispel the miasma. Xiao Heng responded with little interest and left without looking back. After seeing Xiao Heng off, Li Fan hurried to the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. Meeting Yin Yuzhen, Li Fan repeated Xiao Heng's discourse about the Starry Sea quicksand. Starry Sea quicksand is meteoric iron. It's so simple. Yin Yuzhen was somewhat surprised. Can we trust this guy named Xiao Heng? He shouldn't be lying, Li Fan affirmed. But we shouldn't take his word for it. Li Fan suddenly changed the subject. Didn't you say that the caravan of the Wanhua Chamber of Commerce will be passing by Luli Island soon? When the time comes, you might inquire about it from them. That's a good idea, Yin Yuzhen agreed. It would be even better if we could save some money. Anyway, we still need to secretly purchase meteoric iron that meets the requirements. Not many people know about this item now, but it might change soon. In addition, when making the purchase, we need to mix it with other things to divert attention and confuse observers. At the same time, we can have someone spread fake news about Starry Sea quicksand in the market to muddy the waters. Li Fan thought for a moment and then patiently gave instructions. To ensure the allocation of the pure body spirit pool spot, Li Fan needed to plan carefully. Li Fan, you are really something. I only knew that you had a treasure seer physique before, but I didn't expect you to have such skills, Yin Yuzhen said, her eyes filled with curiosity, seeing Li Fan's well-organized arrangements. What did you do before? Yin Yuzhen couldn't help but ask. I was just a minor advisor, Li Fan replied casually. Yin Yuzhen scoffed disbelievingly. Alright, I'll leave this matter to you to handle. I need to go cultivate. Unless there's a special situation, don't disturb me. Oh, and handle the matter I promised Xiao Heng as well, Li Fan concluded and then left the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. Auspicious again? How could it be auspicious again? Yin Yuzhen felt dazed, watching the direction Li Fan left. Her eyes were full of puzzlement. Since meeting Li Fan, every time she entrusted a task to him, her intuition showed signs of great luck. This made Yin Yuzhen almost believe that her ability to seek good fortune and avoid calamity had failed. After all, before encountering Li Fan, she had never experienced any good omens. On the contrary, when she wanted to swallow the body-cleansing pill and embark on the path of cultivation, she felt extreme dread, as if death was certain on the road ahead. It was a clear omen of great calamity. Chapter 36. Fortuitous Find. Yin Yuzhen's intuition told her that as long as she helped Li Fan, there would be boundless benefits in the future. Although she didn't know what kind of achievements this old man would have in the future, Yin Yuzhen chose to trust her instincts and do everything she could to assist Li Fan. So, under Yin Yuzhen's direction, the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion began to operate at full capacity. While collecting meteoric iron, they also purchased a large number of completely unrelated items to divert attention. Other forces within Luli Island noticed the unusual activities of the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion and sent people to investigate secretly. However, due to Yin Yuzhen's early preparation, they couldn't find out anything. Instead, following Li Fan's plan, the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion released a lot of false information about the Starry Sea quicksand. The other forces were skeptical of its authenticity and chose to observe. However, some of them, with the idea of, buy first and sell later, even if it's fake, we can sell it again, purchased a large number of things related to the rumor. Consequently, the rest couldn't sit still and joined the purchasing frenzy. For a while, prices soared on Luli Island, and chaos ensued. Li Fan, the initiator of all this, remained quietly in his home, focusing on his cultivation. 3 months later, Yin Yuzhen finally managed to contact the Wanhua Chamber of Commerce. Early in the morning, Yin Yuzhen and Li Fan left Luli Island on a small boat owned by the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion, heading north for several tens of miles to the agreed sea area. The boat was loaded with goods for this trade, packed to the brim. It wasn't until midday that the Wanhua Chamber of Commerce finally arrived. A dot in the sky rapidly enlarged, and as it got closer, Li Fan realized that it was an airship. A flag fluttered on the airship, bearing a large word, Wanhua. The airship seemed to be half the size of the Taiyan boat in its second form, about 50 meters long. The airship soon came over their heads and gently landed on the water. Manager Yin, long time no see. After stabilizing, hearty laughter came from the airship. Yin Yuzhen was looking at Li Fan, hoping to see surprise on his face. But to her disappointment, Li Fan didn't show any surprise upon seeing the airship of the Wanhua Chamber of Commerce, as if he had long been accustomed to such sights. Yin Yuzhen felt a bit disappointed and more curious about Li Fan. Upon hearing the voice, Yin Yuzhen turned her head. Wu Xingzhou, long time no see. Wasn't our last meeting 3 years ago? Yin Yuzhen smiled in response. Time really flies. Wu Xingzhou laughed and came to the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion's ship. Who is this? He looked at Li Fan and asked with a smile. He is an elder from our Heavenly Treasure Pavilion, Yin Yuzhen replied simply. Seeing Yin Yuzhen's unwillingness to elaborate, Wu Xingzhou didn't press further. Shall we take a look at the goods? After this transaction, it may be difficult for us to meet again, he suggested. Yin Yuzhen was taken aback. Why do you say that? Has something changed? Wu Xingzhou shook his head. I don't know the specific reasons. Just a few days ago, we suddenly received a notice from the headquarters, instructing all trading caravans within the Kongyun Sea to cease all operations and return as soon as possible. If it weren't for the scheduled trading day we had agreed upon, I'm afraid I would already be on my way back. So this transaction cannot be delayed and needs to proceed quickly. Yin Yuzhen was a bit flustered for a moment. After all, the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion was thriving on Luli Island because it was backed by the Wanhua Chamber of Commerce. Now, with the sudden withdrawal of the Wanhua Chamber of Commerce from the Kongyun Sea, what would happen to the future business of the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion? Could she still keep the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion? And why didn't her intuition react at all this time? Yin Yuzhen was in turmoil, and she froze on the spot. Manager Yin. Wu Xingzhou noticed Yin Yuzhen's stunned expression and couldn't help but remind her. Yin Yuzhen forced a smile and snapped back to reality. Entering the cabin, they began to check the traded goods. 16 pairs of jade bai, 23 pieces of coral, 46 night bright pearls. Li Fan led Wu Xingzhou to walk in front of various goods, reciting them one by one. Wu Xingzhou occasionally picked up an item and carefully examined its quality. Then he nodded and carefully put it down. Starry Sea quicksand, 3 pieces. When they reached the middle, Li Fan calmly reported. Wu Xingzhu's face lit up with joy and he quickly walked over to the pieces of meteoric iron. He gently touched them and then turned the meteorite over to inspect it repeatedly. Seeing this scene, Li Fan knew that Wu Xingzhou was no ordinary person. These meteorites weighed at least 50 catties each, but in his hands, they seemed like toys. After a while, Wu Xingzhou reluctantly put the meteorites down. Manager Yin, you're really lucky this time. You actually managed to collect starry sea quicksand, such a valuable item. Li Fan and Yin Yuzhen looked at each other and breathed a sigh of relief. They could now confirm that what Xiao Heng said was correct. This time, the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion seized the initiative and acquired a good amount of starry sea quicksand in advance. They should be able to secure the quota for the pure body spirit pool. After that, there were no more valuable items. Wu Xingzhou was very satisfied with the goods provided by the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion this time. And because they wouldn't see each other for a long time in the future, he specially invited Li Fan and Yin Yuzhen to be guests on the Wanwu Chamber of Commerce's airship. After a hearty meal, Wu Xingzhou led the two to the warehouse of the airship. These are all collected by me from various islands in the Kongyun Sea. Some are invaluable, and some I am not sure of their use. I just bought them because they looked strange. If you are interested, you can choose a few from them. Wu Xingzhou, who was drinking happily, said somewhat proudly, facing the dazzling array of treasures. Yin Yuzhen was excited. She had the ability to sense good fortune and avoid disaster, so wouldn't she be like a mouse in a rice barrel here? Li Fan was initially not interested, but seeing Yin Yuzhen's eager expression, he couldn't refuse. He accompanied her in strolling around inside. You have only the time of an incense stick. Wu Xingzhou seemed to be very interested in this kind of game and said loudly to the two. Yin Yuzhen ignored him and was excitedly shuttling through the warehouse. Inside were thousands of treasures, and even though she could sense good fortune and roughly distinguish their value, she was still dazzled for a moment. Li Fan, on the other hand, was bored and picked up and looked at one item after another aimlessly. He had been through 9 reincarnations and 300 years of ups and downs. What kind of mundane treasures had he not seen? As long as it wasn't related to cultivation, he didn't care. Thinking like this, as his hand touched one of the items, his body suddenly froze. Because a notification from Truth instantly popped up. Detected chargeable item. Consume to recharge. Chapter 37, Kanghai Pearl. Li Fan calmly examined the item in his hand. At first glance, it seemed like an ordinary azure glass ball, but upon closer inspection, one could see the ever-changing light within the sphere, as if a vast blue sea was gestating within. Heavenly Treasure 1 Kanghai Pearl Initial Stage. Out of the Kanghai Sea comes life. Li Fan was utterly astonished. He hadn't expected to encounter a heavenly treasure here. And it was, still in the process of gestation, not yet fully formed. Suppressing his excitement, Li Fan placed the Kanghai Pearl back in its original spot. He pretended to be nonchalant, examining the other items around. He didn't even cast a glance at the Kanghai Pearl until Wu Xingzhou announced that the time was up. Yin Yuzhen felt both disappointed and excited as she walked out, clutching a few items. You're not picking anything. Wu Xingzhou is being so generous. It's a rare chance. You won't find another shop like this once we leave. Yin Yuzhen noticed that Li Fan's hands were empty and couldn't help but comment. Wu Xingzhou chimed in, the manager is right. It's not proper to leave empty-handed after entering a treasure trove. It seems like you don't think much of me. Li Fan thought to himself, it's a good thing you both mentioned it, otherwise, I would have had to bring it up. In that case, I won't be impolite. He walked over to the vicinity of the Kanghai Pearl, picked a jade statue almost at random, a statue resembling an ancient tree, and casually picked up the Kanghai Pearl along with it. I'll take these too, Li Fan said in a somewhat casual manner. Wu Xingzhou praised, Elder has a good eye. This jade statue in the form of an ancient tree was found on a remote island in the farthest north of the Kongyun Sea. This jade statue has been worshipped by a primitive tribe on the island for thousands of years and possesses an air of mystery. Ordinary people, if they place it at home, can achieve a calming and fortifying effect for their mind and body. Wu Xingzhou highly praised the jade tree statue, glancing at the Kanghai Pearl just once and then never mentioning it again. My thanks for your generosity. Li Fan cupped his hands and said happily. And what about this? Li Fan played with the Kanghai Pearl and asked. Oh, this one. I acquired this from a fisherman on Flowing Cloud Island, Wu Xingzhou recalled after a moment. There's nothing particularly special about it, I just found it intriguing, so I took it. Flowing Cloud Island. Li Fan firmly etched the name in his mind. Then he quickly changed the topic. Manager, what did you choose? Wu Xingzu's gaze shifted to Yin Yuzhen. Seeing that Yin Yuzhen had chosen a painting, a pair of jade bracelets, and a gemstone, he enthusiastically introduced these items to them. Li Fan listened absently, his mind focused entirely on the Kanghai Pearl. In the midst of Li Fan's distracted thoughts, the transaction between the two sides came to an end. The Wanhua Chamber of Commerce obtained a large number of treasures, while Yin Yuzhen amassed a significant amount of gold and silver. Manager Yin, we may meet again, Wu Xingzhou sighed, steering the Wanhua Chamber of Commerce airship, disappearing from sight of the two. On the way back, despite the abundant gains from this transaction, Yin Yuzhen couldn't hide her worries. Are you worried about Heavenly Treasure Pavilion's future business? Li Fan asked. Yes, without the Wanhua Chamber of Commerce, we lose a significant sales channel. I'm afraid Heavenly Treasure Pavilion's profits will take a big hit in the future, Yin Yuzhen lamented. I don't know why Wanhua Chamber of Commerce suddenly withdrew from the Kongyun Sea. If you have products to sell, there will be a way. There's no need to worry excessively. Li Fan couldn't think of a good solution for the moment and could only offer words of comfort. Yin Yuzhen nodded, but it was clear she didn't take much solace. Back on Luli Island, Li Fan bid farewell to Yin Yuzhen and hurried back to his home. Closing the door tightly, Li Fan took out the Kanghai Pearl in his room. The original purpose of this trip was just to verify whether the Starry Sea quicksand is meteorite iron. I didn't expect to obtain this treasure. It's a pleasant surprise. Li Fan looked at the Kanghai Pearl in his hand, overjoyed. I just don't know what makes this Kanghai Pearl special. In Li Fan's understanding, each heavenly treasure represented a certain characteristic or rule of the world. The gnarled dragon branch represented achieving great things through small beginnings and the act of engulfing. The rust sword Daozan symbolized an unyielding will and the ability to resist slow decay. The stone tablet of prohibition embodied following the inscribed laws and performing actions accordingly. What special characteristic or rule did this small azure pearl called the Kanghai Pearl represent? Li Fan held up the Kanghai Pearl and immersed himself in the deep blue color, his mind reeling. Unfortunately, despite studying it for quite some time, Li Fan couldn't discern the special feature of the Kanghai Pearl. Perhaps only cultivators can glimpse its mysteries. Li Fan sighed deeply and carefully stored the Kanghai Pearl. Should he absorb it to recharge now? Li Fan hesitated for a moment, but according to Truth's feedback, the Kanghai Pearl was still in its initial state. If consumed, it would probably only increase the charging progress by 1–2%. It was essentially nothing. It would be better to wait for it to fully form before consumption. After all, the item was already in his hands. He wasn't worried about it running away. It took a long time for Li Fan to calm down from the surprise of obtaining a heavenly treasure. After settling down, Li Fan immersed himself in the cultivation of the cleansing heart mantra. A few days later, Li Fan was awakened by an urgent knocking on his door. It wasn't even dawn yet. Who could be coming to disturb him at this hour? Cautious, Li Fan took out a dagger, concealed it in his sleeve, and went to open the door. Who is it? Brother Li, it's me. Xiao Heng's voice came from outside. What is this kid looking for me for at this hour? Could it be that he didn't receive the residence I prepared for him? Li Fan felt a hint of doubt, but he still opened the door and let Xiao Heng in. Panic and anxiety were written all over Xiao Heng's face. Sit down and speak. The two of them entered the room, and Xiao Heng anxiously said, Brother Li, something big has happened. It's about the fact that we were smuggled from the land of immortal extinction. The news has leaked. Who leaked the news? Li Fan was somewhat surprised and asked. We don't know, but everyone on the island now knows that we're not natives of the immortal realm, and instead came here through the heavenly treasure pavilion. It is said that the immortal master is extremely furious and wants to catch us all and kill us. Some of us were extremely frightened and fled on boats in the dead of night. The rest of us don't know what to do. They all say that Brother Li must have a way, so they asked me to come and ask you quickly. Xiao Heng explained anxiously. Li Fan listened and pondered for a moment, then chuckled lightly, Don't worry, this matter is not a big deal. Xiao Heng was stunned. Brother Li, why do you say that? Li Fan sneered, Do you think the government would announce in advance when they're going to capture thieves? If they really wanted to kill you, you would have been dead long ago. Would they let you know the news, and then allow you to escape and discuss countermeasures openly? Brother Li, are you saying this was intentionally leaked to scare us? Xiao Heng realized, too. But why would they do this? He asked with a puzzled expression. In my opinion, this matter probably isn't directed at us. Li Fan suddenly stood up. Their target is likely the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. Asterisk 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 asterisk. One, I might have used a few different terms for Heavenly Treasure, but I'll stick with this one from now. A more accurate translation would be Heaven and Earth Wonder, but that's quite wordy and doesn't make as much sense in English. Essentially, they're just naturally formed treasures, and when a cultivator uses one to build their foundation, they'll become foundation treasures, like Ko Hong's dragon branch or Dao Xuanzi's sword. Chapter 38. Entering the Pure Body Spirit Pool. After placating Xiao Heng, Li Fan hurriedly went to the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. Yin Yuzhen was a bit surprised by Li Fan's sudden arrival. After listening to Li Fan's reason for coming over, Yin Yuzhen explained the ins and outs of the matter with a resentful expression. It turned out that after several months of inquiries, the various forces on Luli Island finally figured out that the Starry Sea Quicksand Luli Island was actually meteorite iron from the sky. But when they wanted to collect the meteorite iron, they found that the Starry Sea Quicksand in the area of Luli Island had already been plundered by the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. And the previous chaos in the market on Luli Island was caused by the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion's manipulations. Heavenly Treasure Pavilion is making a fool of everyone. In shame and anger, they went to the Immortal Master of Luli Island to seek an explanation. Naturally, Yin Yuzhen eloquently defended herself, stating that her actions were justified business competition. The Master of Luli Island also believed that although Yin Yuzhen's approach was a bit excessive, the competition for the quota of the Pure Body Spirit Pool was based on individual abilities. As long as they could collect the materials needed by the Immortals in the end, even if the means were slightly out of line, it was acceptable. So the Island Master did not punish the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion but instead reprimanded those who caused trouble. How could these people willingly accept this? So a few days later, there were rumors on the island that the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion was secretly involved in smuggling businesses for mortals. And as the rumors spread, it seemed like the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion would be questioned and wiped out by the Immortals tomorrow. So, how serious is this matter? Will the Immortals really blame us? Li Fan, after understanding the whole story, couldn't help but ask. This is the tricky part of this matter. Yin Yuzhen frowned. If the punishment is unknown, then the threat is immeasurable. Smuggling mortals was never explicitly prohibited. But this matter is somewhat taboo and should not see the light. Moreover, more than a decade ago, a certain immortal happened to witness the act of smuggling, and in his anger, he killed all the mortals present. Since then, everyone has tacitly engaged in this smuggling business secretly. Li Fan listened and furrowed his brows slightly. So you mean, this matter can be big or small? How it is handled depends on the mood of the Immortals. That's right. If the Immortals don't take it too seriously, then there's no problem. If the Immortals are in a bad mood, then... Yin Yuzhen didn't finish her words, but her face turned a little pale. Li Fan fell into silence. He thought of the scene when he first met Ko Hong and Dao Xuanzi. In the eyes of these Immortals, mortals were like ants and could be killed at will. I'd rather take the risk of being beheaded than give up this smuggling business. I think the profits involved in this must be extremely high. Li Fan sighed. That's for sure. The cost of a single stowaway requires a small world to scavenge for nearly a decade to fulfill. You can imagine how much profit is involved. Yin Yuzhen nodded. Precisely because of this, some Immortals can't help but secretly join in and take a share of the profit in the end. These Immortals will never admit that they are involved in these things. When they come into contact with us, they use immortal techniques to conceal their appearance. And in the end, they take away most of the profits. Speaking of this, Yin Yuzhen was also a bit helpless. So, we have to deal with this matter on our own in the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. Li Fan thought of the immortal who guided them into the immortal realm when he first entered the immortal world and nodded. So, what is the temperament of the immortal stationed on Luli Island? What is his attitude towards this matter? Li Fan asked again. Master He Zhenghao of Luli Island is usually reclusive, and I haven't seen him much. So I can't be sure about his attitude. But judging from his previous ways of dealing with mundane matters, he is not a soft-hearted person. Yin Yuzhen said in a deep voice. After analyzing it in his mind, Li Fan sighed in the end. Li Fan knew that even if he had many schemes, in the face of absolute power disparity, everything was in vain. Regarding this kind of time bomb-like unstable factor, Li Fan had no solution. Li Fan was reminded of the large amount of immortal mortal mist stored in a certain cabin of the Taiyan boat. If we were in the land of immortal extinction, with thousands of elite warriors, perhaps we could still put up a fight. But alas, Li Fan quickly suppressed this dangerous idea. Let's set a time and meet. This matter should not be stirred up too much. Li Fan spoke. Yes, that's what I think too, Yin Yuzhen said. They just want us to hand over some starry sea quicksand. Since we have the advantage and have collected enough, we can throw out a portion of it and let them fight amongst themselves. They will surely start fighting each other soon. Li Fan snorted. There's no unbreakable alliance in this world. 3 days later, the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion met with the various forces on Luli Island and made the following demands. The Heavenly Treasure Pavilion agreed to hand over a portion of the Starry Sea quicksand but required the other party to provide equivalent value in goods for the exchange. At the same time, how the Starry Sea quicksand would be divided among the families would be decided by each family themselves. Lastly, it must be ensured that the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion would receive one quota for the pure body spirit pool. These conditions were not too demanding, so after some discussion, the two sides quickly reached a reconciliation. After all, the two sides did not have deep-seated hatred. It was just for the sake of contending for the quota of the pure body spirit pool. Thus, after paying the price of dozens of meteorites, the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion successfully extricated itself from this chaotic vortex. Almost on the same day, the rumors about smuggling on the island disappeared without a trace. And the other forces, in order to obtain those dozens of meteorites, began to openly and secretly vie with each other, no longer paying attention to the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion. Time flew, and the day when the pure body spirit pool would open was approaching. After the tally of the materials provided by each family, the quotas for this pure body spirit pool were finally determined. There were a total of 13 quotas for this entry into the pool, and the Heavenly Treasure Pavilion had secured one. With the major issues settled, Li Fan couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. He only awaited the opening of the spirit pool, where he would be able to remove the miasma from his body and officially step onto the path of cultivation. This day, he had been waiting for far too long. So, even with Li Fan's calm demeanor, he was starting to feel a bit excited. Name: Li Fan. Realm: Mortal. Physical age: 42/99. Mental age: 505 1299 sa. Virtualization charging progress: 121%. Anchor charging progress: 51%. Current anchor points: 1. Bound items: Jade Cosmos 1000 Variations Sutra, Taiyan Boat, Stone Tablet of Prohibition. Damaged. Li Fan looked at the interface provided by Truth. After 2 years of cultivation, his physical age's limit had reached 99 years, with no sign of further increase. As for the limit of his mental age, due to his continuous cultivation of the cleansing heart mantra, it was still slowly increasing. He wondered what changes would occur after the baptism of the pure body spirit pool. Li Fan was looking forward to it. The day of the pure body spirit pool opening finally arrived. On this day, guided by a servant, Li Fan ingested the body cleansing pill given to him by Yin Yuzhen and entered the central array of Luli Island. Chapter 39. The First Lesson of Cultivation. The 13 individuals entering the central array, apart from Li Fan, were teenagers of around 13 years old. They had been given instructions and didn't dare to speak lightly, their eyes filled with excitement and curiosity as they observed their surroundings. The instant they entered the array, the environment they found themselves in was completely different from Luli Island. It was as if they had gone from a bustling city to the depths of the mountains. Lush trees surrounded them, and the air was filled with the sounds of birds and insects. In the distance, peaks and ranges intertwined, creating a picturesque landscape. A light breeze passed by, causing rustling sounds that echoed like waves. Li Fan and the others were standing at the foot of the mountain at this moment. Looking up, the mountaintop was hidden in thick clouds and mist, completely obscured from view. The group ascended ancient stone steps, climbing upwards for 2 hours without stopping. These teenagers all had impressive constitutions. Despite climbing for so long, they didn't even seem to breathe heavily. As for Li Fan, due to his not-so-young age and lack of recent exercise, he was drenched in sweat and could barely keep up with the group. Another hour passed, and they finally reached the mountaintop. The mountaintop was only a small clearing, and the group dispersed, already feeling a bit crowded. This peak was the highest point among the group of mountains, and looking around, all they could see was a vast sea of clouds. The wind roared, and the sea of clouds churned, occasionally revealing island-like mountaintops. All these teenagers were born and raised above the ocean, and they had never witnessed such a spectacular sight. At this moment, they were all staring in awe, lost in their thoughts. For Li Fan, this view was ordinary. He squinted and looked at the sun in the sky. They had already been inside the array for most of the day, but the position of the sun hadn't changed at all. It seemed to be some kind of illusion. "How's this scenery?" Suddenly, a voice rang out beside the group. The teenagers were startled at first, but then they immediately reacted. "We've seen the Immortal Master." They greeted respectfully, bowing. Li Fan also followed suit. The speaker was naturally the Immortal Master who guarded Luli Island. He appeared to be around 30 years old, dressed in a green robe. With a kind expression and a smiling face, he looked very amiable, exuding the image of a kind-hearted person. Seeing that this Immortal Master didn't seem as frightening as the rumors, one of the teenagers gathered the courage to reply, "The scenery here is excellent, truly befitting of a sacred place for immortals. I have never seen such a marvelous sight before, it stirs one's heart," another youth added. Immortal Master He Zhenghao smiled and nodded, saying something that instantly silenced the young people present. "When I first came to Luli Island, the height of this peak was one of the shortest within this mountain range, far below the clouds." The young people were stunned by He Zhenghao's words and fell silent for a while. Finally, someone praised, "Immortal Master's supernatural powers are truly unbelievable to be able to raise a mountain like this." He Zhenghao smiled wryly, "I'm just a humble cultivator in the foundation establishment stage. How could I possess such skills?" The youth who had just flattered blushed instantly, feeling ashamed and lowering his head. The rest of the people exchanged glances, unsure of the meaning behind Immortal Master He Zhenghao's words. Li Fan, on the other hand, looked at the countless peaks in the sea of clouds, lost in thought. "Do you know that the mountains and rivers in the world can gradually grow taller, just like people?" Immortal Master He Zhenghao no longer kept them in suspense and said slowly. Upon hearing this, the youths were all dumbfounded, their faces filled with disbelief. "This is truly unbelievable. Is this true? Could it be that these mountains and rivers are also living beings?" Although the idea of mountains and rivers growing taller was too astonishing, coming from a high and mighty immortal like Immortal Master He Zhenghao, the youths naturally chose to believe it. However, their faces turned pale, and they had a hard time accepting it at the moment. Immortal Master He Zhenghao continued, "Some peaks, although they seem tall, have already reached their limit and can never progress further. Some might be just small mounds now, but they have boundless potential. Who knows, after several years, they might grow into towering peaks that touch the heavens. Just like the Mount Shaowei under our feet, it was inconspicuous at first, but in just a few decades, it has already surpassed many other mountains. Of course, most mountains are like the countless peaks below this sea of clouds, always destined to be mere decorations, silently gazing up at the peaks above the clouds. If mountains are like this, what about people? Today, you all have the fortune to step into the pure body spirit pool and rid yourselves of the miasma. Whether you can step onto the path of immortality, or even have the hope of longevity on the great road in the future, it all depends on your individual destiny." Looking at the bewildered and dazed group of youths, Immortal Master He Zhenghao sighed. "No matter what happens in the future, give your best today. I've said what needs to be said, now, go." "Immortal Master, may I ask where the pure body spirit pool is located?" Although some of the youths didn't fully understand the meaning behind Immortal Master He Zhenghao's words, they could at least comprehend that they were going to enter the pure body spirit pool. After all, they were still young at heart, so they eagerly asked. "It's right there," Immortal Master He Zhenghao said calmly. Following his direction, they saw that the location Immortal Master He Zhenghao was pointing to was not on the mountaintop but at the edge of a cliff thousands of feet high. "Immortal Master, are you joking?" one of the youths couldn't help but exclaim. He Zhenghao's expression changed, and with a cold snort, he seemed to make no movement, but the head of that youth suddenly flew high, and his body fell to the ground. Blood splattered, staining everyone nearby. This sudden scene stunned all the young people. Some were scared and wanted to scream, but they covered their mouths tightly, only trembling and pale. Some were so frightened that their bodies went limp, falling to the ground. Some immediately knelt down and kowtowed to He Zhenghao, apologizing. "I'll give you another lesson. In the future, when stepping onto the path of cultivation, having a broad perspective is crucial. Know who you can offend and who you cannot, what words you can say, and what words you cannot. Be careful and considerate. Don't wait until you die to blame me for not warning you today. He Zhenghao, no longer the amiable old man, looked coldly at the group of youths. Li Fan watched this drama unfold, observing the varying reactions of the young people. He knew that this lesson from Immortal Master He Zhenghao would undoubtedly leave a deep impression on them. Not to mention these young people, even Li Fan, after listening to He Zhenghao's words, felt like he had gained some insights. He deeply saluted the Immortal Master, sincerely saying, "Thank you for the lesson." Then he turned and walked towards the edge of the mountain. In front of the 1,000-foot cliff, without any hesitation or pause, Li Fan, with an unchanged expression, took a step forward. But instead of falling, the sea of clouds in front seemed to be conscious, rolling and gathering under Li Fan's feet, steadily holding him up. As he took another step and stabilized himself, Li Fan was carried by the rolling white clouds, flying towards the depths of the sea of clouds. He Zhenghao watched Li Fan's figure and couldn't help muttering, "Excellent temperament, but unfortunately, too old." What a pity. Chapter 40. Unexpected Gains. The group of youths watched as Li Fan soared into the clouds and suddenly realized, understanding that Immortal Master Yi's words contained no deception or exaggeration. They felt a sense of shame. The first ones to enter the pure body spirit pool will get more spirit fluid. Hurry, all of you, go. Immortal Master Yi's expression softened, addressing the group of young men. So the youths rushed towards the sea of clouds. Surrounded by dense clouds, Li Fan felt disoriented. The white clouds around him continued to gather, becoming denser. In an instant, they condensed into white spirit fluid, enveloping Li Fan. In the midst of the spirit fluid, Li Fan not only didn't feel suffocated but also experienced incredible warmth and comfort. It felt like being a fetus in the womb, and Li Fan's mind gradually relaxed completely. A warm and gentle breath flowed through every inch of his skin, entering through the pores and entering Li Fan's body. His entire body and soul seemed to be soaked in warm water, almost making Li Fan moan in comfort. But soon, warmth turned into heat. Heat turned into scorching heat. The scorching heat turned into a blazing fire. Unexpectedly, Li Fan let out a howl. In that instant, he lost control of his body. He felt a scorching magma-like flow rampage within and destroy his body, tearing and piercing through every nerve. This kind of pain was beyond what a human could endure. Li Fan instinctively wanted to summon truth, but he managed to endure it. 300 years of hard pursuit, isn't it for this moment? No matter what, I will never give up. I want to cultivate, I want longevity. In the midst of excruciating pain, Li Fan's consciousness shattered, but a strong determination supported him, preventing him from collapsing. The hot stream circulated within his body endlessly, seemingly without end. With each cycle, the level of destruction and pain deepened. Eventually, this agony reached a point where words could not describe. The pain was like knives, chopping Li Fan's soul into pieces and then chopping those pieces again, incessantly and endlessly. Even with Li Fan's strong will, he gradually lost the power to resist in the face of this level of pain. Slowly, Li Fan's consciousness began to drift. His consciousness began to dissipate. Even at this moment, the perseverance in Li Fan's heart kept him holding on, not activating truth. His consciousness became a nearly blank slate. Cultivation, longevity, dispelling miasma, spirit pool, Luli Island, heavenly treasure, truth. All of these thoughts slowly dissipated with the fading of Li Fan's consciousness. Instinct replaced self, and so Li Fan, since he arrived on Luli Island, had rarely stopped, tirelessly cultivating the mysterious yellow heart purification mantra. It naturally started running. Instinct replaced consciousness, and the cleansing heart mantra, which Li Fan had practiced almost non-stop day and night since he came to Luli Island, naturally ran. As the cleansing heart mantra ran, Li Fan's consciousness seemed to have a supporting pillar, reconverging and strengthening. Although he remained in a state of unconsciousness, he gradually became like a reef by the sea, allowing the wind and waves to batter him without falling. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. Among the 13 individuals who entered the pure body spirit pool, 11 had already come out. Out of the 11, only 4 had successfully rid themselves of the miasma within their bodies, while the remaining 7 couldn't endure the intense pain and failed in the purification process. Apart from the unfortunate individual who had perished, the one person who had yet to emerge was naturally Li Fan. He Zhenghao sensed the faint and elusive aura within the pure body spirit pool formation, becoming increasingly astonished. As the one in charge of the pure body spirit pool formation, he knew well that purging the immortal mortal miasma from a mortal's body was an excruciating ordeal. The immortal mortal miasma was deeply embedded in a mortal's bloodline, present since their formation in the womb. As mortals grew, the connection between the miasma and flesh became even more inseparable. The pure body spirit pool formation was created by one of the leaders of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, the Eastern Extreme Celestial Lord. It forcefully expelled the miasma from the flesh by completely destroying the body, then reshaped the body through regenerative power. This cycle continued until all miasma within the body was completely purged. As one grew older, the miasma intertwined with the flesh made it increasingly difficult to separate them. More destruction and reshaping were required to completely eliminate the immortal mortal miasma. The pain experienced during this process was beyond imagination. He Zhenghao had presided over the formation on Luli Island for over 50 years. He had seen all of the individuals who managed to complete the purification. The oldest of them was only 31. For someone of Li Fan's age, He Zhenghao believed there was no hope of success. However, Li Fan's performance was completely unexpected. This person's determination is simply terrifying. If he can succeed in purifying his body, reaching the foundation establishment stage won't be difficult, and perhaps even the golden core stage. He Zhenghao's gaze flickered. Maybe I should establish a good relationship with him early on. At this point, He Zhenghao sent the others out of the formation, leaving only Li Fan to wait inside. 3 more days passed, and He Zhenghao, seeing Li Fan still hadn't come out, was speechless with astonishment. If he couldn't sense Li Fan's stable vital signs within the formation, he would have rushed in. Currently, there was no way to interrupt the purification formation, so he had to continue waiting. Another 3 days passed. He Zhenghao's expression became somewhat unsightly. He didn't know what kind of monster he had encountered, to endure this long in the pure body spirit pool formation. Worse still, the materials sustaining the formation were running low. If the materials were insufficient, the formation would be forcibly terminated, which could lead to unforeseen consequences, possibly undoing all the progress made. Normally, even if the formation was interrupted at this stage, it would only be Li Fan's misfortune, and it wouldn't be related to He Zhenghao. But thinking of Li Fan's horrifyingly steadfast determination, He Zhenghao's expression fluctuated. Never mind, let it be. Consider this a gamble on this man's extraordinary future. After saying this, He Zhenghao used his hand to perform a technique. Items flew out of his storage ring and disappeared into the depths of the sea of clouds. Thank goodness I've been quietly reserving some of these materials each time. He Zhenghao looked at his now almost half-empty storage ring with a hint of regret. 2 more days passed, and the roiling sea of clouds gradually calmed. The white clouds frolicked and escorted Li Fan back to the mountaintop. He scanned the situation and confirmed that the miasma was completely gone from Li Fan's body. He Zhenghao finally breathed a sigh of relief. Congratulations, young friend. From now on, the fetters are gone, and longevity is within reach. He Zhenghao warmly exclaimed. Feeling his body in a state he had never experienced before, Li Fan was still adjusting to his new physique. At this moment, witnessing He Zhenghao's sudden change in attitude, Li Fan felt puzzled. Although he had removed the immortal mortal miasma from his body, he was still just an ordinary person who hadn't formally cultivated. He was ultimately just an ordinary mortal. Why was He Zhenghao being so kind to him? Li Fan looked at He Zhenghao with a puzzled expression. He Zhenghao understood and told Li Fan about how he had spent 11 days in the pure body spirit pool, which was much longer than he knew. What? I stayed inside for so long? Li Fan was truly surprised. Yes, young friend, you didn't know, but the materials for this formation were about to run out. I even spent my own resources to add more for you. He Zhenghao boasted to take credit for himself. At this moment, Li Fan was deeply shaken. Not because of He Zhenghao's selfless dedication, but because he found an additional cultivation technique on the panel of truth. It wasn't the cleansing heart mantra he had been practicing all along. It was the Venerable refining heart mantra.